Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. Naruto. Hyuga's is paired with Magneto ability at the beginning. Chapter 1. There was laughter in the classroom, and Hyuga realized that he was panicking. He saw a man with a Mediterranean hairstyle asking students to introduce themselves. As the students introduced themselves one by one, laughter and applause continued. The browser history hasn't been deleted yet. How did you travel to the Hokage world? Is this still the first lesson of school? Hyuga Satoru looked around the classroom and became even more panicked when he saw many familiar faces. The person in the first row who proudly mentioned my Hokage father in his self-introduction seemed to be the unit of measurement of bounty in the underground black market in the future. The head was exchanged for the bounty by a top financial fan. The very white-haired guy in the middle of the second row wears a black mask. If he remembers correctly, he is the future chakra measurement unit. The law of cause and effect is 50-50. He was beaten into one eye in the Third War a few years later. The 2B boy behind him, wearing goggles, killed his master's wife and slaughtered the entire clan because of his puppy love, causing a bloody storm in the ninja world. In the end, he died and only the scum was left. The more Hyuga Satoru looked at him, the more panicked he became. These awesome characters in the original books all had a bad end. Wouldn't it be even worse if he had just traveled through time? He turned his attention to the guy who was introducing himself. The man's teeth reflected like flashlights. His dream was to carry his youth to the end. He seemed to be the only heaven-defying person among the common people who could change his life. He almost missed the finale with one leg. His dancing skills were highly praised by Madara, and he won the title of strongest physique. The name of the technique. However, she was pregnant and had to spend the rest of her life in a wheelchair. As for the other classmates, Hyuga Satoru didn't know many of them. They were all cannon fodder, leaks among leaks. A few years later, a big crop would be cut off in the third battle, and not many would survive to the finale. It would be okay if I were the Zong family. After all, I would be protected by a bunch of branch house cannon fodder. If I didn't commit suicide, I might still be able to survive the finale. But according to the memory of the original person, not only is he a branch house, his parents are also dead, and he is the least popular among the Hyuga clan. It's over, Barbie is done. This wave is a nightmare start. Hyuga realized that his eyes were ashen as death. If you say you want to time travel, just do it. When you travel to the Hokage where human life is insignificant, the key timeline is still the one with the highest death rate before the three wars. The Battle of Kanabi Bridge, the Battle of Mount Kikyo. Hyuga Satoru couldn't even imagine how he could survive it. Just when Hyuga Wushang was hopeless, a gentle voice brought him back to reality. Hyuga Satoru-san, it's your turn to introduce yourself. Hyuga Satoru raised his head and saw his instructor, Fujino Daikichi, looking at him with a smile. Other students in the class also focused their attention on him. Seeing this, Hyuga Satoru had no choice but to stand up. My name is Hyuga Satoru. I come from the Hyuga clan. My favorite food is ramen and barbecue. My dream is. Hyuga Satoru hesitated, survived to the finale. The class suddenly became quiet, looking at Hyuga Satoru with surprise and hesitation, survived to the finale. What is that? Fujino Daikichi smiled awkwardly and touched the sparse top of his head. It seems that Hyuga Satoru-san likes to read comics very much. The finale and other things are only in comics. I hope that in future studies, Hyuga Satoru-san will not be addicted to comics. Yes, Hyuga Satoru responded perfunctorily and sat down. What a risk. He was nervous and said what was in his heart just now, but no one seemed to notice him. After the remaining passers-by introduced themselves, Fujino Daikichi cleared his throat and said, "Students, the self-introduction session at the beginning of the school year is over. Next is the first class. Please open the textbook, Inherit the Will of Fire." Hyuga Satoru flipped through the red textbook on the table. The whole text was full of beautiful remarks about the Will of Fire, which was completely nutritious. Fujino Daikichi on the podium explained the Will of Fire in an emotional voice, and most of the students below also listened with interest. Hyuga Satoru was restless. He opened a few more pages and read carefully for a long time before he saw two words between the words, MLM. Have I fallen into an MLM brainwashing center? Is this all Konoha's political propaganda? The whole book promotes that we are all one family, we must protect the children, protect the village, and give everything to the village. The point is, I'm only 6 years old, and you want me to go to the battlefield and sacrifice myself. Is this a beaver? Hyuga Satoru didn't realize it when he was watching anime in his previous life. Only when he actually traveled through time and became an insider did he realize the absurdity. After experiencing the initial panic, Hyuga Satoru gradually calmed down. In the classroom, Fujino Daikichi's voice of reciting, "The Will of Fire," was still loud, but Hyuga Satoru had already turned his gaze outside the window and was frantically imagining the next plan in his mind. Today was his first day entering the ninja school, and it was also the beginning of his ninja journey. A careful training plan must be formulated for his dream of living to the finale, or goal. Click. Hyuga Satoru pushed open the creaking wooden door and saw an old courtyard. This was the house left to him by his parents. Although the space was not very large, it was well equipped. The whole day's ninja school course was filled with meaningless things like explanations of the Will of Fire. There was no practical class or ninjutsu class that Hyuga Satoru expected. He has no memory of his mother, who seemed to have died during childbirth. His father was a branch house Jonin guard who died during a mission to protect the clan. Thanks to this, he was able to inherit his father's legacy as a child, house and get the qualification to go to ninja school. As a branch house, he also has a caged bird on his forehead. His future trajectory is probably the same as his father's, becoming a guard of the clan and dying, honorably, to protect the clan. Headache. Hyuga Satoru rubbed his temples. Not all branch house fathers are branch house heads. There was an uncle who was the head of the clan family. His monthly living allowance was only 1,500 taels. Excluding eating, drinking, and defecation, there was not much left for him to train. A guy who keeps talking about breaking his destiny has no worries about food and drink, and enjoys the top treatment among the Hyuga clan, while more branch houses, like him, are struggling to make ends meet. Sighing, Hyuga Satoru dispersed the distracting thoughts in his mind. Now is not the time to think about those things. After a day of classes, his hungry stomach was already growling. After looking through the remaining ingredients in the kitchen, he planned to consider the training plan after dinner. Life is already very miserable, and I cannot let my stomach become miserable any longer. He was about to pick up the iron pot to clean it, and something unexpected happened. The moment his palm came close to the iron pot, the pot body suddenly began to tremble uncontrollably. At the same time, all the metal products in the kitchen were constantly vibrating, as if playing a metal symphony. Hyuga Satoru stood in the middle blankly, and a voice came from his ear. Electromagnetic force. LV1. Distance to next upgrade, 2000 experience points. Electromagnetic force. Hyuga was stunned for a long time, and it took him a while to recover. Have I awakened to electromagnetism? Which electromagnetic force is one of the 4 fundamental forces? At the same time, Hyuga Satoru noticed certain changes in his body. An indescribable feeling of comfort surged from every cell, and his whole person was refreshed. He suddenly thought that the human body's redox life activities at every moment are constantly generating weak biological currents, and each cell is a miniature biological battery. Simply put, everyone has his own unique magnetic field, biomagnetic field. Is this feeling of refreshment due to the awakening of electromagnetic force, which greatly increases my biomagnetic field and then feeds it back to my body? Hyuga Satoru remembers that in his previous life, many profiteers would falsely claim that the insoles and underwear they sold contained Tiantian magnets, which could increase the body's biomagnetism and have the miraculous effect of prolonging life and treating cancer. That is a proper IQ tax, but in my current situation, it seems that the biomagnetic field has really been amplified. Could he really be able to control electromagnetic force? Hyuga swallowed, and tentatively stretched his palm towards the kitchen. The knife inserted diagonally on the chopping board trembled a few times, and flew over unsteadily. Although the trajectory is similar to that of a drunk driver, Hyuga enlightens Chunin and cannot help but be ecstatic. Electromagnetic force. It's really electromagnetic force. He was a science student in his previous life, so he cannot be unfamiliar with electromagnetic force. Magneto is such a bully, He has only preliminary developed electromagnetic force, and at best he can only be regarded as the king of iron. As one of the 4 basic forces, electromagnetic force is not comparable to ninjutsu. Gun sister, do you know? A coin penetrated the ruthless man of the cruiser. The ampere force generated by the electromagnetic field is used to accelerate the metal so that it can obtain extremely high kinetic energy. This is the electromagnetic gun. Use electromagnetic force to bombard heavy atomic nuclei, causing them to split into 2 or more nuclei, releasing neutrons to impact and produce a chain fission reaction. Commonly known as hand-rub nuclear bomb. Light has wave-particle duality. It uses electromagnetic force to twist bent light particles to create an ultra-wide-range holographic projection. Genjutsu is so weak. Electromagnetic force interferes with the brain's electrical signals and directly controls the other party's vision, hearing, and touch. This is the real puppetry. Stars all have magnetic fields. If the manipulated electromagnetic force is strong enough, you can even pull planets with your bare hands. Mars will hit the Earth, and the earthquake will explode. Master Madara calls him an expert. If you think bigger, are you you? No, you are just a collection of tiny atoms, and everything you do is the result of the constant movement of these atoms. This is true for your past, your present and your future. Using electromagnetic force to control the movement of atoms, all changes are under control. Looking at the universe, you are omniscient and omnipotent. You are God, and God is you. To put it simply, as long as you have a strong enough grasp of electromagnetic force, there is almost nothing you can't do. Hyuga Satoru took a deep breath to suppress the shock and surprise in his heart. Fortunately, I was a science student before I traveled through time, otherwise I would have a treasure trove of nothing and I wouldn't know how to use it. Life is really unpredictable. The big intestine wraps up the small intestine. In the morning, he was still worried about surviving to the finale, but now he has acquired a terrifying ability that can be called a bug. After calming down, Hyuga began to test his ability to control electromagnetic force. There are many metal objects in the kitchen, and there are enough materials for Hyuga to experiment with. After some testing, he roughly figured out the extent of his abilities. With the LV-1 electromagnetic force ability, his control over electromagnetic force was limited to the manipulation of some easily magnetized metals, and he was able to initially use magnetic fields, including but not limited to magnetization and discharge. In addition, the continuous use or development of electromagnetic force will increase the experience value. His experiment just now increased the experience value by 2 points, which is still far away from the 2000 points for upgrading to LV2. Hyuga knows how to smash it, and he doesn't feel disappointed. Most of the ninja's items are metals that are easily magnetized. With his current ability, he might be able to take Genin's life unexpectedly. Can you believe it? Eating hot pot and singing songs, suddenly the head disappeared. After the experiment, Hyuga Satoru felt weak, and the weak chakra in his body had dried up a lot. After all, Hyuga is from a famous family in Konoha, and the art of chakra refining is widely spread. His father also left handbooks related to chakra refining, so he practiced chakra refining before entering school and owned a small amount of chakra. The consumption of electromagnetic force is mainly mental and physical substances. The more intuitive manifestation is chakra. After all, chakra is a collection of mental power and physical power. Hyuga let out a light sigh. The chakra that had just been consumed in his body was quickly recovering, and the momentum was even stronger than before. He quickly thought that his biomagnetic field had become much stronger due to the increase in electromagnetic force, and that the mental and physical strength required for chakra refining had a certain relationship with the biomagnetic field. Under this increase, his chakra the volume will naturally increase as the tide goes up. Immediately afterwards, Hyuga Satoru thought about maximizing the development of his own abilities. He still had a lot of experience points before reaching LV2 electromagnetic force. There was no hope of upgrading in the short term. He could combine his own hardware conditions to maximize the use of electromagnetic force ability. This is his goal at this stage. Byakugan, can the bloodline of the Hyuga family be combined with electromagnetic force? If it were an advanced electromagnetic force, the Byakugan would naturally be too useless, but with the current level of electromagnetic force, the Byakugan seems to have many wonderful uses. His clairvoyance ability is about 1 kilometer, and it will continue to increase with practice. This also means that no enemy within a kilometer can escape his electromagnetic cannon. It is a proper map cannon. In addition, Gentle Fist seems to be able to be combined with electromagnetic force. Regular Gentle Fist attacks the meridians and blocks the flow of the opponent's chakra. However, with the acceleration and accumulation of electromagnetic force, if it is struck with one palm, the person may be dead. There is also 8 trigrams air palm. Others use air cannons, but I use electromagnetic guns. Well, there's a clue. Hyuga Wu rubbed his chin, the smile in his eyes getting deeper and deeper. Goo goo. At this moment, his stomach growled unsatisfactorily. Hyuga looked out the window and realized later that it was completely dark outside. After awakening the electromagnetic force and experimenting, an unknown amount of time passed, and his stomach completely stopped working. That's right, let's regard cooking this time as part of our training. Hyuga Satoru rolled up his sleeves with a smile and turned on the faucet to wash the vegetables. The kitchen knife on the chopping board trembled a few times and flew up unsteadily to cut the vegetables he had washed. The night outside was already very deep, and in the silence, his thin figure and the kitchen knife flying out of thin air were reflected on the kitchen window. In the early morning, Hyuga Satoru got up hard after a hard night's work and came to the ninja school. He was so excited when he awakened the electromagnetic force last night that he barely slept. His white eyes turned into panda eyes, and his white pupils looked like layer cakes under the attack of dark circles. Hey, Satoru, why don't you have any energy today? Hongdu next to him looked at him curiously, holding a glutinous rice ball in his hand and eating it with relish. Fine, Enko thought for a while, then suddenly turned her face towards Hyuga Satoru, and whispered, Satoru, what did you mean by surviving to the finale yesterday? Hyuga thought for a moment and said, it's a very powerful thing. Oh, seeing that Hyuga Satoru had no intention of answering, Enko pouted and stopped asking. Looking at the Madara-colored meatballs in Enko's hand, Hyuga Satoru's mind flashed to what Enko would look like after turning into a sweet potato, and he felt a sudden physical discomfort. Although Hongdu is not very beautiful now, she is still pretty. Why will she become an old aunt in the future? By the way, let me remind you one thing, eat less meatballs. Why? Enko took a bite of the meatball and glanced at Hyuga Satoru, will you not survive the finale? Hyuga Satoru thought for a while and said, it's better not to survive the finale. Red beans. Just when Hongdu was about to say something, someone in the class coaxed, here comes the head teacher. The chaotic class instantly became quiet, and everyone sat up straight. Fujino Daikichi walked to the podium with his textbook in hand and announced with a smile, students, this morning's class is mainly theoretical class, and in the afternoon it is a practical class on shuriken throwing. I hope the students can study hard. Shuriken throwing class. Hyuga Satoru raised his eyebrows. It was just a good time to test the ability of electromagnetic force to control shuriken. He had been training with kitchen utensils for a long time last night. Students, now turn to the textbook, Inheriting the Will of Fire, to Chapter 1, Section 3, and we will continue yesterday's lesson. Good. Hyuga Satoru started to feel sleepy when he saw the analysis of the Will of Fire in the textbook. He simply covered his head with the textbook and fell asleep on the table. Fujino Daikichi's eyelids jumped in anger when he saw this scene, but then he seemed to think of something and shook his head slightly. As a branch house of the Hyuga clan, if you don't work hard, the consequences will be very miserable. He looked at another part of the class. A boy with a bandage on his forehead and white pupils was looking at the textbook with a serious look on his face. Fujino Daikichi smiled slightly and said, compared with him, Iroha-san is much easier to learn. After an unknown amount of time, Hyuga Satoru stretched and felt refreshed. Not only did he not feel as weak as when he just got up, but he felt full of strength. Hyuga Satoru thought for a while, and it should be that the electromagnetic force adjusted his biomagnetic field during the rest, allowing his condition to recover faster. At present, he cannot actively control his biomagnetic field, but after he cultivates his electromagnetic power to a higher level, he may be able to actively control his biomagnetic field, making his vitality extremely strong and possessing the same injuries as the first Hokage. Fast healing physique. In the afternoon, Fujino Daikichi took the students to the playground and started training on shuriken throwing, including wrist strength, throwing skills, etc. Hyuga Satoru found that most of the children in the family were absent-minded, but those children from civilian backgrounds listened with interest. The reason is that the descendants of the family have basically been trained by their elders before entering school, but it is difficult for civilian children to have access to this kind of knowledge, and they are not on the same starting line from the beginning. No matter what era, civilians are all leaks. Hyuga Satoru sighed. Even though the school has just started, some students already have a good amount of chakra, and their biomagnetic fields are much stronger. Compared with them, ordinary students are like fireflies. The most vigorous one among them, Hyuga Satoru, looked at the white hair in the front and frowned slightly. Hitaki Kakashi, the biomagnetic field is so strong, he may almost have Genin's chakra. He is indeed a genius who became Jonin at the age of 12. Okay, the explanation is over. Fujino Daikichi clapped his hands. The next step is the throwing training. I will record your scores. Xiaojun Miko, you are the first. Yes. The black-haired girl responded timidly and walked from the crowd to Fujino Daikichi. There was a wooden target about 10 meters in front of her, and next to it was a bamboo basket filled with shurikens. Xiao Junmiko picked up a shuriken, recalled what Fujino Daikichi had just explained, and threw it towards the wooden rake. Snapped. Shuriken stabs in the outer circle. 6 points, not bad. Little Sumiko threw a few more. 5 points, 6 points, 7 points. Fujino Daikichi nodded. Okay, next one. Hyuga Satoru observed the throwing of shurikens. His fingers moved slightly, and several shurikens in the edge of the bamboo basket trembled a few times. The shuriken is very light. According to Newton's second law, acceleration is inversely proportional to mass. It should be much easier for me to control it than a kitchen knife. At this moment, an exclamation suddenly came from the crowd. Oh my god, how did you do that? Hyuga looked around and saw Kakashi holding several shurikens in each hand and throwing them with both hands without any pause. His movements were smooth, and they all hit the target. So amazing. God, genius. Fujino Daikichi smiled and nodded. Well, the basic skills are very solid, and the single-wheel shuriken throwing skills are no weaker than the average genin. He is worthy of being the son of Master White Fang. Hitaki Kakashi, full marks, next one. I come. As soon as Fujino Daikichi's voice fell, a girl with long black hair suddenly appeared from the crowd and landed at the spot where Kakashi had just thrown. She also threw with both hands, her movements were smooth, and she hit the target. As expected of the Uchiha clan, Uchiha Rin, full marks. Fujino Daikichi said with satisfaction. Do you want it to be rolled like this? Hyuga Satoru's eyelids twitched. Uchiha Rin has become the king of scrolls in his eyes. He had had enough of those scroll kings in his previous life. Unexpectedly, he traveled to Hokage and met another scroll king. Uchiha glanced at Kakashi coldly, walked to his seat, and next to him, Obito shouted excitedly. Hey, Kakashi, do you see, this is the strength of our Uchiha clan, just wait, I will definitely defeat you. Kakashi ignored him completely. Hyuga Satoru looked at Obito speechlessly, and the others looked at him dancing like a fool. Who would have thought that such a guy would be the big boss in the future? Next, Uchiha Obito. It's my turn. Obito walked forward excitedly. I want you to take a good look at my strength. I have been secretly training shuriken for a long time. Obviously, Uchiha Rin's performance gave him great confidence. He picked up a shuriken and threw it fiercely, and something that surprised everyone happened. The shuriken actually missed the target and flew out. Missed the target, 0 points. Fujino Daikichi said weakly. I don't believe it. Accident, this must be an accident. Uchiha Obito threw another shuriken angrily, but missed the target again. 0 points. Fujino Daikichi was speechless. Kakashi glanced at Obito and quickly looked away from him. Uchiha Lin glanced over helplessly, and almost kicked out of the 3 rooms and 1 living room with her toes in embarrassment. That expression seemed to say, don't look at me, don't look at me, he and I are not from the same clan. Mistake, mistake, this is definitely a mistake. This is not my level. Obito threw another shuriken. 0 marks. Throw again. 0 marks. Ha ha ha. There was thunderous laughter all around. Obito's face turned red, His whole body was like an inflated chili pepper, and his teeth squeaked when he bit it. I don't believe this evil. He threw out the last shuriken in his hand. Snapped. The shuriken was inserted firmly into the red heart. The air suddenly became quiet. Obito was stunned for a while, then laughed. Let me just say it was a mistake. This is my true strength. Did you see it? He turned around and saw everyone looking at him like a fool. Uchiha covered her face with her palms helplessly. What she was thinking at this time was whether to kill this guy in advance for the reputation of the Uchiha clan. Get rid of it. You, what are you doing? I clearly hit the bullseye. Obito said hesitantly. Fujino Daikichi said feebly. Obito, take a closer look. Obito turned around. His eyelids twitched suddenly, and his mouth opened wide for a moment, as if he could swallow an orange. How? This is possible. I saw that what he hit was not the test target at all, but the target thrown by other students a few meters away. The other group was holding a shuriken ready to throw and looked at him in confusion. In the corner, Hyuga Satoru raised the corners of his mouth slightly without leaving any trace. Hyuga Satoru glanced at the hopeless Obito and thought to himself, Obito, you can't blame me. As long as you do nothing stupid, no one will be surprised. You are the best test subject. Besides, I am here to stimulate your motivation to study and stop you from indulging in puppy love. It is for your own good. After conducting interference control tests on the shurikens thrown by Obito through the control variable method, he found that he had a certain ability to control even high-speed flying shurikens. From now on, ninja tools will basically pose no threat to him. Looking at the dancing Obito, Fujino Daikichi scratched his Mediterranean-like hairstyle and suddenly had a headache. Why is Uchiha such a weirdo? Forget it. Next, Hyuga Iroha. Among the crowd, a boy with a bandage on his forehead and pure white eyes walked out, throwing shurikens with both hands. 10 points, 9 points, 10 points. It's amazing, only a little worse than Kakashi and the others. After all, we are the Hyuga clan. Why is there a bandage on his forehead? Someone asked in a low voice. Shish, you don't know. That's from the Hyuga clan. Hyuga Iroha's face turned cold, he subconsciously clenched his fists and walked back to his seat. Fujino Daikichi nodded with satisfaction. Through observations over the past few days, he found that although Hyuga Iroha was not the most talented, he must be the one who worked the hardest. For Hyuga Branch House, hard work is their only way out. Next, Hyuga Satoru. Hyuga Satoru stepped forward, picked up a few shurikens, and weighed them a few times. 7 points, 7 points, 7 points, 0.10 points. After several 7-pointers in a row, the last one was a mediocre 10-pointer. The crowd murmured quietly. Although they are both from the Hyuga family, they seem to be a lot worse than Iroha. The gap with Kakashi and the others is even bigger. After all, not everyone is a genius. And haven't you noticed that the first few shots he made were almost 8 points? It seems that his luck is not good either. Hyuga Satoru's face was calm, as if he didn't hear the comments of the people around him. Hyuga Iroha glanced at Hyuga Satoru and then withdrew his gaze. Although they are both members of the Hyuga family, they don't have much contact with each other, so this level is not worthy of his attention. After school, not long after Hyuga Satoru returned home, someone came knocking on the door, saying that he was the guard of the branch house. The other party wore a ninja forehead protector and handed him a slightly bulging envelope. Hyuga Satoru, this is your living expenses for this month. Hyuga Satoru took the envelope with his name and amount written on it. Okay, thanks. The guard nodded and disappeared. This branch house guard is here specifically to provide living expenses. Hyuga Satoru will only see him once a month, and there will be little additional communication during the meeting. Hyuga Satoru opened the envelope and found 15 thin banknotes, 1,500 taels. He had a headache. In this world where a bowl of ramen costs 60 taels, it was a bit restrictive to survive a month with 1,500 taels. As one of the most famous families in Konoha, compared to the Uchiha, the Hyuga clan respects clans and systems to the extreme, being lawful, even too lawful. Each clan member is like a part of a huge machine, walking silently on his own route. But this is fine. If it were another branch house, their actions would basically be controlled by the Zong family. Now, he has a little freedom. Hyuga Satoru didn't have much worry about the caged bird on his forehead. When the electromagnetic force becomes stronger, it can even decompose matter directly from the source, with just a curse seal. The top priority is to find ways to improve our strength. The next day. Today is the weekend, there is no school. Hyuga Satoru came to a river. The sparkling water reflected his face in the surrounding forest. By the Nanhi River. This is probably the most famous river in Konoha. The love-hate relationship between Uchiha and Senju, and even the entire history of Konoha village, can be traced back to this river. Today the river welcomed a strange fishing boy. Snapped. Hyuga Satoru stood in the river with his trousers rolled up, aimed at the position, and grabbed it suddenly. He caught lonely, and the river water splashed on his face. The Nanga River basin is extremely wide, running through the entire Konoha, and its upper reaches are in the Uchiha tribe. The location where Hyuga Satoru is catching fish is still quite a distance from the Uchiha tribe. So he doesn't have to worry about Uchiha coming to cause trouble. The reason why I choose fishing is naturally to improve my life. Wouldn't it be nice to learn from Naruto's fishing and give yourself extra meals? He is now in a critical period of development, and nutrition must keep up. It is said to be fishing, but it is not just fishing. 2 chopstick-sized metal sticks were slowly flying around Hyuga Satoru's body. It was polished by him using a thin iron rod. As long as the target is found, the iron stick will fly up suddenly and stab the fish hard. In addition, as he moved in the river, some small metal ores gradually adsorbed on his raised calves. The river bed is a gathering place for metal ores. Metal ores in nature will be washed away by water and deposited in the river bed. Konoha is located in the south, with a mild and rainy climate and many mountains. The Hokage rock was dug out of a huge rock. In this special geographical environment, the Nanga River is the largest river in Konoha, and there should be a lot of metal ores deposited in the river bed. If you take some valuable ores to a ninja tool shop and recycle them, you should be able to exchange them for some money. Hyuga Satoru used magnetic attraction to continuously pan for metal. Eat and earn money. Plus leveling up. He has almost tested it these days. The experience points required to upgrade electromagnetic force are similar to proficiency. The more difficult the application, the faster you gain experience points. Correspondingly, if you keep collecting a kind of wool for use, the income will be lower and lower. At first, he controlled the kitchen knife to cut vegetables and level up, but as his proficiency increased, the experience gained in this way became lower and lower. Now he is multitasking. Not only is he controlling 2 metal sticks used for fishing at the same time, but his lower legs are also constantly adsorbing metal in the river bed. The rate of increase in experience points is considerable. Hyuga Satoru found the target. A few meters away from him, there were several small fish gathered under a boulder. If they could catch them, they would have a good meal. If he continued to approach, the fish might notice the fluctuations in the current and escape. However, he had other methods. Hyuga Satoru held his breath. Bah! Electricity as thick as a thumb burst out from between his toes and spread out along the river. The fish was paralyzed. Whizzing. The 2 metal tags surrounding him flew away instantly. One of them shot extremely accurately, not only piercing the belly of a fish, but also stabbed the tails of 2 fish next to it. 3 arrows in a row. Hyuga Satoru was satisfied and controlled the heavy iron stick to fly back. At the same time, because of his difficult application of electromagnetic force, a voice sounded in my mind. Electromagnetic force experience value +2. The electromagnetic force of LV1 is still too weak, and it is difficult to have other applications except basic magnetization and discharge. The current released is also very weak, and it is impossible to stun the fish instantly. It must be fished with an iron stick. But Hyuga Satoru is already very satisfied. These are the 4 basic forces, and the upper limit is there. Thank you Faraday. Thank you Maxwell. Thank you Tesla. Thank you junior high school physics teacher. Without you, I wouldn't be able to eat this fish today. Amen. After fighting hard in the Nanga River yesterday, Hyuga Satoru has accumulated some metal ore. Ideal is full, the reality is very skinny. Originally, he had some hope of finding gold dust. As a result, when he trudged from the river to the shore, his lifted thighs and toes were densely covered with strange things. There are rust stains on Madara's kunai and shurikens, tangled wires, shapeless pots and pans. What he didn't expect even more was that there were actually women's underwear. Because of the metal steel ring, it stuck to his butt like a slug. Which Uchiha's masterpiece is this? The location where he mined gold was in the lower reaches of the Nanhi River, and the middle and upper reaches were in the Uchiha tribe's land. These strange things undoubtedly came from the Uchiha tribe. However, in addition to these things, Hyuga Satoru also obtained some fairly pure metal ores. Some of the textures seemed to be fine. After saving some, he planned to go to the ninja shop in the village to inquire about the recycling price. As far as he knew, the daily metal consumption of ninja shops was quite high. If a ninja shop was willing to recycle it, even if the price was low, it would at least be a source of income for him. His next training ideas. It will be quite expensive. After walking around Konoha village, Hyuga Satoru spotted a ninja shop. Unlike other ninja shops, there is a metal smelting furnace next to this shop, indicating that this shop has a high possibility of recycling metal ores. The shop owner is a middle-aged man with exposed shoulders and a lot of muscles. Hyuga Satoru took a breath and stepped forward bravely. "Hello, I have some metal ore, I wonder if you can collect it here." Hyuga Satoru handed the man the metal ore he had put in the bag. The man frowned slightly, and instinctively wanted to send Hyuga Satoru away, but when he saw the back shell of the ore in the bag, he was slightly stunned, and took it to observe carefully. The smallest metal ore in the bag is only the size of a fingernail, and the largest one is the size of a fist, reflecting a slight luster. Hyuga Satoru waited nervously for the man's response. He doesn't know the value of these ores, but they can be easily attracted by him using electromagnetic force. The purity seems to be very high, so the ninja shop may not recycle them. Sure enough, after checking it carefully, the man nodded. The purity of these ores is not low and they are relatively easy to refine. If there is a large amount, I can accept some. Hyuga Satoru breathed a sigh of relief. How did you get all this ore? The man stared at him suspiciously. I picked them up by the river. I usually collect some stones by the river. Over time, I accumulated some. Hyuga Satoru replied calmly. He had already prepared his words. That's it. The man nodded. Although he is not a ninja, he still recognizes Hyuga Satoru's eye roll. Hyuga clan. Although he looks very young, he is from a wealthy family after all, and his parents may also be powerful ninjas. Although the quantity of these ores is small, their purity is good, so there is no problem in selling them to save face and recycling them. Of course, he would never have imagined that Hyuga Satoru was an orphan whose parents both died. I'll give you 300 taels for these ores. If you pick up more ores later, you can come over and recycle them. Thank you, uncle, Hyuga Satoru responded with a smile. 300 taels is not low, after all, his monthly living expenses are only 1,500 taels. Rounding it all off, the monthly income is over 10,000. You dare to think, he is not even 7 years old. It's still that big river. Hyuga Satoru's trouser legs were rolled up to the roots and he was fishing for ore seriously. There are 2 piles of things on the shore, one is ore, and the other is also ore. The only difference is that the smaller pile is the ore that Hyuga has carefully selected and has recycling value. The larger pile was full of strange things, including rust, Madara's pots, pans, iron wires, etc. Even if there were ores, they were scraps that the ninja shop would not accept. On the fire next to it, the metal skewers holding the grilled fish were turning by themselves, and the alluring fragrance continued to emit. It's time to eat. After collecting this piece of river area, Hyuga stretched himself, walked to the grilled fish and started eating happily. Be your own boss and avoid 996. It's time to develop new abilities. After eating and drinking, Hyuga sighed deeply. He took out a coin from his pocket and tossed it high. As the coins fell, the world around them seemed to move in slow motion. Hyuga Satoru's fingertips flashed with electric light, and he lightly curled his fingers. Whoosh! The coin burst out with an electric arc, instantly hitting a fish swimming in the river. The water splashed and the fish floated to the surface with its belly turned over. Sister Pow's famous stunt, electromagnetic gun. Awakening the electromagnetic force and not cosplaying Sister Pow's stunts would be a shame for the 2-dimensional dramas I watched in my previous life. But as of now, LV-1's electromagnetic gun. It can only be used for fishing. Hyuga Satoru sighed. He didn't know that his electromagnetic power level was different from the electromagnetic power level of Cannon's sister in Academy City. But LV-1 wants to develop a railgun. It's not impossible, but its power is quite impressive. These days, Hyuga Satoru has been thinking about how to develop a railgun. His current Byakugan range is a full kilometer, and basically no creature within a kilometer can escape his insight. If paired with an electromagnetic gun for long-range strike. Sir, times have changed. You can't do it with your bare hands, so you can only use tools. His initial idea was a gun-like weapon, using high-precision iron pipes and bullets to form a weapon similar to the electromagnetic sniper rifle of his previous life. But soon, he gave up the idea. First, if he wants to make such a high-precision weapon, ordinary ninja shops simply cannot do it. Even if they can, the price is not what he can afford now. Secondly, due to power considerations, with the electromagnetic force strength of LV-1, it may not be realistic to achieve his ideal power. After his electromagnetic power level increases, this method may be the optimal solution. His second idea was a weapon similar to a crossbow. The long and narrow metal track in the middle is used to exert electromagnetic push. The special metal crossbows launched are long and flat in shape, which can maximize the acceleration of the magnetic field. In addition, the elastic potential energy of the bow itself can also be superimposed with electromagnetic energy to achieve maximum lethality. Hyuga Satoru's eyes lit up. For his current level of electromagnetic force, the second method is undoubtedly the optimal solution. The first type of future electromagnetic force level improvement is used. The second one is available now. Now that long-range attack methods are available, short-range attack methods must also be developed. Gentle Fist is Hyuga's most famous attack method. Hyuga Satoru said that dogs don't even learn. He came to a big tree with thick arms, lowered his center of gravity, and assumed the Gentle Fist posture. Hyuga Satoru took a deep breath, his eyes were bright, and the light blue light film gradually lit up on the palm of his right hand. Wait until your savings reach a certain level. Snapped. Hyuga Satoru suddenly strikes out. Just hearing a dull roar, the light blue light film burst out from the thick tree trunk along the palm, and the bark splashed. The leaves of the big tree behind were swaying in the rapidly spreading blue light film, and the leaves were scattered all over the ground. If the Hyuga clan leader were here, his eyelids would jump and he would exclaim, "What the hell is this Gentle Fist?" Hyuga Satoru looked at his palms, which were red and trembling slightly. As I expected, when the magnetic flux is compressed to a certain extent, this high-intensity electromagnetic pulse will be formed. Electromagnetic pulse weapons, that is EMP, which has appeared in many science fiction movies, and the principle is not complicated. It uses a rapidly diffusing strong alternating magnetic field to impact nitrogen and oxygen atoms in the air to split electric ions, and then uses the principle of electromagnetic induction to instantly generate high voltage current in the circuit, instantly breaking down the circuit. The palm struck by Hyuga Satoru was wrapped in a strong high voltage current and had extremely strong repulsion. This is also the reason why the leaves in the back fell to the ground. This move is called Magnetic Storm Palm. It's pretty powerful. If I have enough chakra, I can turn each of Gentle Fist's 64 palms into Magnetic Storm Palm. It's just. Hyuga Satoru frowned slightly and looked at his slightly trembling palms. The effects of force are mutual. This move requires very high physical strength. With my current physical fitness, I'm afraid I can't even finish 18 palms, let alone 64 palms. It seems that I need to improve my physical fitness. In addition to fishing and mining, I can also use the fitness routine of the prisoners in my previous life. In his previous life, he was a social animal and had no time to exercise, so he bought a complete set of books on prisoner fitness, and he still accumulated a lot of theoretical knowledge. After thinking about the direction, Hyuga stretched and felt extremely relaxed. Then it's such a happy decision. I will save money from mining to develop electromagnetic guns, and the prisoners will exercise and practice Magnetic Storm Palm. Hyuga Satoru, this guy is getting more and more excessive. In class, Fujino Daikichi looked at Hyuga Satoru sleeping on the seat and felt a headache. After so many years of teaching, he has never encountered such a lazy Hyuga student. During this period, his impression of Hyuga Satoru can basically be described in one sentence. Sleep during class and pee after class. Are you mistaken? You are a ninja from the famous Hyuga family. Uchiha Rin, who is also from a famous family, is the best in every subject and competes with Kakashi for first place. There is also Hyuga Iroha. Although his talent is slightly inferior to them, he works extremely hard and can be regarded as a genius. Only you. Fujino Daikichi feels that his hair loss has become serious again recently. If this continues, the Mediterranean Sea on his head will spread again. Hey, let's put some wolfberry in the thermos cup next time we go to class. If Hyuga Satoru knew what Fujino Daioshi was thinking, he would definitely cry out that he was wrong. Although I sleep in class every day, I work very hard after school. The upgrading of electromagnetic force requires experience points. Shouldn't I go back and level up all night, instead of cosplaying Bladestorm in the class during the day? I have been fishing every day lately. The fish caught were enough to last for several days. I have also accumulated a pile of ores, so I just need to exchange them for money. The experience value of electromagnetic force has also increased by 1 point. Isn't this better than listening to you chant sutras? Comfortable. Hyuga Satoru stretched out and wiped the drool from the corner of his mouth. When he turned his head, he saw Anko eating meatballs and looking at him with admiration. Is get out of class over? Satoru, you are so brave. Anko said with admiration. Teacher Fujino stared at you for a long time before get out of class ended. No wonder, when I was sleeping, I suddenly felt a dark swishing sensation behind me. Hyuga suddenly understood. At this moment, Hyuga Satoru suddenly noticed an unkind look and turned his head, only to see Hyuga Iroha looking at him coldly from the seat in front. Although they are both from the Hyuga family, his relationship with Iroha is not that good. During this period, Hyuga Iroha came to him more than once, accusing him of losing the face of Hyuga's famous family, and even challenged him with righteous words, proving that Hyuga Branch House was not the guy who other classmates said was messing around. Of course Hyuga Satoru would not agree, because he was afraid of slapping him to death. He observed that the amount of Hyuga Iroha chakra has increased rapidly recently, even approaching the genin level, but the key is that this is not enough for him. He has not been idle during this period. LV1's electromagnetic force experience value has been greatly improved, his physical fitness has also been greatly improved, and the magnetic storm palm can be used instantly. Gentle Fist faced the magnetic palm and beat him hard. He was really afraid that if he missed it, Iroha would not be able to get up. During this period, Hyuga Satoru's physical fitness training reached an almost demanding level, because he discovered that the enhancement of physical fitness would enhance his own biomagnetic field, and the improvement of biomagnetic field would in turn increase his control of electromagnetic force. However, he also gradually discovered that this kind of feedback had an upper limit, like an invisible door that hindered his deeper exploration of electromagnetic force. Hyuga Satoru guessed that this should be the effective level. The electromagnetic force at level 1 only has so much authority, and it cannot increase without limit. Corresponding to the level, it should be the authority to open the electromagnetic force. The higher the level, the higher the authority. Abilities such as rubbing nuclear bombs and pulling planets with bare hands are basically at the high level, and there is still a long way to go. After school, Hyuga Satoru came to the big river again. He had basically explored the river area where he had previously mined, so this time he came to a higher position. It's still a 3-piece suit. Fishing, mining, and leveling up. Hyuga Satoru stood in the rushing river, the water reaching his knees. Around the body, 2 slender metal sticks slowly rotated. The difference from before was that 2 long iron plates were tied with ropes behind Hyuga Satoru's back and sank into the river, dragging his body that was struggling to move. This is version 2.0 of Hyuga Satoru's upgrade for efficient leveling. The metal plate is endowed with magnetism, which can attract metal ore in the riverbed, greatly improving the mining efficiency. During this time, Hyuga Satoru's body has become accustomed to the old 3-piece suit. The electromagnetic force rises as fast as a turtle crawls. If we don't develop some new tricks, we don't know how long it will take to upgrade. Hyuga Satoru was walking in the fast river like this. When he got tired and sleepy, he stopped to rest for a while. When your physical strength is almost restored, start the second round. In order to prevent being washed away by the current, he also developed a new ability. Electromagnetic absorption. The soles of his feet were firmly absorbed in the mud under the river bed, stabilizing his body that was constantly being impacted by the water flow. Because of this additional application, the rate of increase in electromagnetic force experience has slightly increased. Just like this, I don't know how many rounds it has gone through, the sun in the distance has gradually sunk to the horizon, and dusk has turned the horizon into orange. Hyuga Satoru estimated that today's quantity would be about the same. He trudged from the river to the shore. When he was about to sort out the ore, he heard a faint popping sound coming from the forest to his ears. Hyuga Satoru was suddenly shocked. Illusion. No, although the sound is not loud, it is definitely real. Hyuga Satoru quietly opened his Byakugan. From the perspective of Byan, he clearly saw that about a few dozen meters away, a thin girl was seriously practicing physical skills on a wooden stake. The bandaged palm struck the tree stump clearly and rhythmically. Hyuga Satoru frowned slightly. He knew this person. The one who competes with Kakashi for the top spot in the class. He still had a vivid memory of the scene where this guy and Kakashi were rolling each other during the last shuriken throwing test. It seems to be called something. Uchiha Rin is here. Sure enough, he is King Wan, and he is still practicing at this late hour. Hyuga Satoru smacked his mouth and moved softly, trying not to let himself be discovered. It seems that the mining location was too early this time. He had basically touched the lower reaches of the Nanhi River. This time, he came to the middle reaches of the mining river, which was too close to the Uchiha tribe. Hyuga Satoru couldn't help but curse. You Uchiha, if you don't stay in the training ground and practice properly, why would you go to the forest to practice? Do you think you are me and you can gain experience by fishing? Just as he was retreating cautiously, a scream suddenly came from the forest. Who? The moment the voice fell, a shuriken was shot fiercely towards Hyuga Satoru. Snapped. The shuriken struck a tree branch a few meters away from Hyuga Satoru. What a hassle. Hyuga Satoru frowned. He had kept his movements as low as possible, but it seemed that he was still noticed. There was no way, it was almost night, and it was quite quiet by the Nanhi River. His actions were obviously a bit obvious in such an environment. A few seconds after the startled shout, a slender figure emerged from the forest, holding a kunai and staring coldly at Hyuga Satoru. Who are you? Why are you trespassing on the Uchiha clan's land? Strictly speaking, this is at least a few hundred meters away from the Uchiha tribe, right? Hyuga Satoru said helplessly. Who are you? There was a hint of astonishment on Uchiha Rin's face, and the palm holding the kunai subconsciously relaxed a little. She originally thought it was some strange ninja who wanted to sneak into the tribe at dusk, but she didn't expect that it was just a boy about her age. And these eyes. I should have seen you, right? Uchiha Rin frowned. Hyuga looked familiar to her, but she couldn't remember it. Hyuga Satoru sighed and said speechlessly, Sister, if my white eyes hadn't turned into presbyopia, we should be classmates. Yeah, Uchiha Rin tilted his head. She only sees the strong ones, and the classmates in the class only remember a few good ones. For the Hyuga clan, there seem to be two classmates. One is called Iroha, and his talent is pretty good. The other seems to be a loser. He sleeps in class all day long. His classmates nickname him Obito of the Hyuga family. It seems that this is the guy in front of me. What are you doing here? Hyuga Satoru looked embarrassed and pointed to the clothes he put on the shore. Do you believe me when I say I came here to take a shower? Because he went down the river to mine, his trouser legs were rolled up to the top of his thighs, and his body was mostly wet. If he was equipped with a harpoon, he was really afraid that Uchiha Rin would shout out that classic phrase. Yuan wa, did you also clean up the bottom of the river when you took a shower? Uchiha looked at him coldly. Next to Hyuga Satoru's clothes, there is a pile of rusty Madara's garbage, rusty pots and pans, wires, shurikens, and even underwear. Isn't this guy a pervert? Uchiha Rin felt sicker the more she thought about it. Hyuga Satoru was about to explain something when he saw Uchiha rushing to his side with a swishing sound, and her slender calves moved her toes to sweep towards his chest fiercely. Hyuga Satoru raised his upper body and raised his head, narrowly dodging Uchiha Rin's attack. This classmate, I think we should have some misunderstandings. Hyuga Satoru's scalp was numb and he immediately explained. But Uchiha Rin obviously had no intention of listening, and his voice was cold. First, I don't like anyone disturbing me when I'm practicing. Second, I don't like other people bathing in the same river as me. The moment Uchiha Rin's cold voice fell, he suddenly rushed to Hyuga Satoru's side. Hyuga Satoru struggled to defend. He could understand the previous sentence. What the hell is that sentence at the end? Uchiha, what a magical creature. The two engaged in a confrontation on the shore, and the smacking sound of the physical collision echoed in the grove. Uchiha Rin's attacks were quite brutal. Every blow hit Hyuga Satoru's weak points, but Hyuga Satoru was able to resist them all without any danger. Once may be a coincidence, twice may be luck, 3 times or 4 times. Uchiha Rin frowned slightly. Could it be that she has slacked off in her training recently and only practiced for 9 hours a day, causing her strength to decline? It seems you are not as simple as you seem. She looked at Hyuga Satoru with a hint of solemnity in her eyes. Hyuga realizes that there are hardships to express. This place is too close to the Uchiha tribe. If there is too much movement, other ninjas will definitely be attracted. The sky was getting dark and dusk had fallen, and the two of them stood in the hazy night, facing each other. Sister, how about I come back to apologize to you next time? My mother told me to go home for dinner. I have already said, first. Stop it. Hyuga Satoru decisively gave up the negotiation. Uchiha Rin suddenly felt a sudden increase in pressure. Between the collision of fists and legs, the figure kept retreating from the shore. This guy. Uchiha Rin's expression gradually became serious. After dodging Hyuga Satoru's attack, he jumped back suddenly and threw out 2 shurikens. Hyuga Satoru took his time and used his kunai to resist steadily. Uchiha Rin began to form seals very quickly. Hyuga Satoru's eyes twitched. Ninjutsu. This guy actually learned ninjutsu. During the gap between Uchiha Rin's seals, he suddenly rushed forward, wrapped the light blue thunder in his palm, and firmly printed it on the opponent's chest. Buzz. With a dull roar, Uchiha Rin's body suddenly flew out and fell into the Nanga River next to it, with water splashing everywhere. I'm sorry. My mother really told me to go home and eat spicy food. Hyuga Satoru screamed in embarrassment, wrapped his coat around the pile of ore, put it on his shoulders, turned around and ran away. Wow. Uchiha Rin emerged from the river, looking at Hyuga Satoru's running back with a hint of shock and disbelief in his eyes. At this moment, her chest was twitching slightly like an electric shock, feeling numb and numb. Her clothes were soaked by the river water, and her waist-length hair was firmly attached to her body, outlining her flat chest. Did she lose? Lost so easily? What is that palm? Gentle fist. What is gentle fist? Hyuga Satoru's back has gradually disappeared into the night. Uchiha Rin is soaking in the biting river water, and the corner of his mouth suddenly curls up. I thought Kakashi was already unparalleled in the world, but I didn't expect someone to be braver than him. As Hyuga enlightened. Interesting. Uncle, how much does it cost to recycle this pile of ore? In front of the ninja tool shop, Hyuga Satoru pointed to the ore he packed in a sack. The quality of the goods this time is good and the quantity is large. I can give you 5,000 taels. After checking it, the man reported a number that made Hyuga Satoru's heart beat. 5,000 taels. This price is definitely not low. We are getting closer to being able to customize electromagnetic guns. Because of last night's experience, Hyuga Satoru decided to sell the ore he had hoarded first to stabilize it in the past few days. He didn't know what Uchiha Rin would think of last night's events. Low EQ statement. He ran near the Uchiha tribe last night and beat him up. High EQ statement. He started an elegant yet polite competition with Uchiha Rin on the banks of the beautiful Nanga River at sunset. Although the final result is that people become drowned rats. As for the worst outcome, Hyuga Satoru has also considered it. Nothing more than when he came to school the next day, the class was filled with stories about him and Uchiha Rin fighting for 300 rounds next to the woods. Hyuga Satoru's eyes flickered. It is obviously unrealistic to hide the ability of electromagnetic force forever. He must be prepared to deal with it in advance, especially to deal with the Zong family. Kid, what are you thinking about? The man in the ninja shop handed Hyuga Satoru a stack of banknotes. When he saw Hyuga Satoru who was meditating, he asked with a smile. I was thinking that uncle is really a good man. I have asked in other places, but they only gave me 4,000 taels at most. Hyuga Satoru raised his head with a pure smile in his pure white eyes. Yeah, the man scratched his head. How about you work with me in the future? I think you are quite talented, and I will pay you a salary. A black line appeared on Hyuga Satoru's forehead. Ha ha ha, just a joke. Just a joke. The man smiled awkwardly. Really, how could I say such a stupid thing? With such eyes, one could tell that he belonged to that wealthy clan. With such a noble status, how could he work with him because of lack of money? Even mining. Maybe it's because you want to experience yourself, right? Hyuga Satoru came to the class, but there was no discussion as he expected. The class was surprisingly quiet, everyone was doing their own thing, and no one noticed him. He turned his attention to Uchiha Rin's position. The other party seemed to have no intention of looking for him. He buried his head and seemed to be preparing something. Hyuga Satoru breathed a sigh of relief and sat down in his seat. Satoru, why do you look so depressed again? Enko blinked at him. Because I practice seriously every night. Real. Enko looked at him with a lewd expression. Hyuga Satoru was too lazy to talk to her. What he had to consider now was to give a perfect explanation for his abilities. By the way, Satoru, are you ready for the actual combat test later? Hongdu suddenly asked. Practical assessment. Hyuga looked at her in astonishment. No way, no way. The first semester is almost over, don't you know it yet? Enko looked at him in shock, her mouth wide enough to hold an orange. Oh my gosh, about my deskmate who slept at the end of the semester and didn't even know about the final exam. If you don't tell me, I really don't know. Is it the time for the final assessment? It seems that I can't fish like this in the future. Hyuga Satoru looked stunned. No wonder the class was unexpectedly quiet when I came in today. It turns out that the final exam is here and everyone is cramming. Do you still know that you are fishing? Hongdu rolled his eyes at him. Fishing here is not fishing there. But Hyuga Satoru didn't bother to explain. Enko sighed and kept talking. I'm afraid you will be embarrassed now. Many people wish you, a member of the Hyuga clan, bad luck. Do you know that many people in the class are laughing at you for being lazy and sleeping in class every day? You are a loser like Obito. Enko chattered endlessly. Hyuga was silent, his eyes flickered, he didn't know what he was thinking. Soon, the head teacher Fujino Daikichi came to the class. After explaining the relevant matters, he organized the students to go to the playground to start the practical assessment. He glanced proudly at the students on the playground, as if looking at a bunch of green leeks. Under his guidance, many students have made great progress and they all have a bright future. But when he glanced at the two people, his expression became strange and helpless. One is Uchiha Obito. This guy is definitely Uchiha's weirdo. Fortunately, there is Uchiha Rin in the class to save his face, otherwise the student's impression of Uchiha would have changed. Another one is Hyuga Satoru. Although Obito is a bit stupid, at least he is not lazy, but he is very energetic in class. But this guy Hyuga Satoru. So lazy. I sleep during class and pee after class. You will catch fish all day long. I've never seen him listen to a class seriously. Look at Hyuga Iroha, he is also a Hyuga, why is there such a big difference? Yi Daji has a headache. There are so many weirdos in this family. And Uchiha, a Hyuga. Fujino Daikichi took a deep breath, cleared his mind of distracting thoughts, and called out the names of the two students. Little Sumiko vs. Kamikawa Yudo, let's begin. After forming the seal of opposition, the two began a fierce physical battle, and the sound of physical collision echoed in the playground. Fujino Daikichi nodded slightly. When most students had not learned ninjutsu, the battle at this stage mainly relied on physical skills and shuriken throwing. These two students had a good foundation among civilians. After a while, Yudo Kamikawa put his kunai on Shaosumiko's neck. Kamikawa Yudo wins. Fujino Daikichi nodded and announced the results of the assessment. Hyuga Satoru watched quietly from the side. He didn't know his specific strength, but thinking of the battle with Uchiha Rin last night. Fujino Daikichi announced the next fight. Hyuga Iroha vs. Yamashiro Aoki. Hearing this, there was a commotion around him. It's Iroha. Yamashiro Aoki is probably going to be in trouble. Yes, after all, he is a genuine Hyuga ninja, not something that can be compared to some parallel import. Yamashiro Aoki was stunned for a moment when he heard his name, and could only bite the bullet and walk up. He has no hope of defeating Hyuga Iroha. After all, in the class, Iroha is the second-tier genius after Kakashi Uchiha Rin. Sure enough, at the beginning of the battle, Yamashiro Aoki was completely at a disadvantage. Hyuga Iroha, who turned on his Byakugan, made a cunning and vicious move and hit him on the chest with a palm, sending him flying backwards. Is that gentle fist? That's awesome. Yeah, I couldn't see clearly at all, and I defeated the opponent in an instant. Struggling to get up from the ground, Yamashiro Aoki felt a stabbing pain in his chest, and the flow of chakra became stiff and condensed. Is this the power of gentle fist? He clutched his chest, panting and looking at Iroha in shock. Although he knew he would lose, it was too fast. Of course, Iroha was obviously very impressed and raised his head slightly. There is no doubt about the power of gentle fist. In Hyuga, not everyone can master it. Realizing that there was something wrong in Iroha's words, Hyuga Satoru raised his eyebrows disdainfully. At the current stage, Iroha, who has Byakugan and gentle fist, does have a great advantage against ordinary ninjas. But in the later stage, the shortcomings of gentle fist and Byakugan became apparent. The upper limit was too low. Sharingan had Gundam, and other blood successor limits also had many abilities to compete with Kage. Only with gentle fist, you can't achieve anything high or low. Strong, it's strong, but that was it. The point is that the Hyuga family is stuck in its ways, rigidly following traditions, and never innovating or developing new abilities. The Hyuga family is so big that they cannot find a strong person at the shadow level. This is also the reason why Hyuga Satoru doesn't like to have too much contact with family ninjas. The path he wants to take is destined to be different from Hyuga. Fujino Daikichi called out several names one after another, and Hyuga Satoru saw Kakashi's fighting skills, and he defeated the opponent cleanly and neatly with only physical skills, which was even worse than Iroha. He is worthy of being the #1 genius of this session. Hyuga Satoru secretly praised that under the guidance of Hitaki Sakumo, Kakashi has surpassed his classmates by more than one level. Based on the current Kakashi chakra amount, my chakra amount is about 1.2 calories. The strong biomagnetic field gives me many advantages in chakra amount. Just as Hyuga Satoru was thinking, a voice broke his thoughts. Hyuga Satoru vs. Hyuga Iroha. Hyuga Satoru raised his head and saw Iroha looking at him indifferently. Wow, it's actually a battle between two Hyugas. It's really fun to watch. Who do you think will win? Of course it's Iroha. Hyuga Satoru knows how to fish all day long. I've never seen him take it seriously. How can he beat Iroha? Next to her, Anko tugged at the corner of Hyuga Satoru's clothes anxiously. Hey, Satoru, don't be so proud of yourself. If you can't beat me, just admit defeat. It's not shameful. It's shameful if you get hurt. Hyuga gave her a blank look. Are you so unsure of me? In the crowd, Uchiha Rin's eyes flashed brightly, and he was locked on Hyuga Satoru. Unlike other people's boos, she knew that Hyuga Satoru had been hiding his clumsiness. The two came to the playground and formed a seal of opposition. Hyuga Iroha looked unkind and said, Hyuga Satoru, I remember that you have never gone to the family training ground to practice gentle fist. I will tell you, Hyuga. We'll find out after we beat him. Hyuga Satoru interrupted him directly. Iroha's face darkened, and he shouted in a low voice, Byakugan, open. Veins like earthworms bulged ferociously beside the eyelids, and pure white eyes stared at Hyuga Satoru. Aren't you going to turn on your Byakugan? Unnecessary. Hyuga Satoru shrugged. Arrogant. A palm was wrapped with strong wind and struck out. Iroha's expression was unkind. Hyuga Satoru just turned sideways slightly and avoided the opponent's attack. Is it any luck? Iroha frowned. Another palm strike was even more powerful, but to Iroha's surprise, he struck out again. Why are you so fast? Iroha said in shock. No matter how slow he was, he still discovered that Hyuga Satoru had dodged his attack just by relying on his physical reaction speed. It's okay, Hyuga realized. His daily training in fishing and mining had already made his physical fitness far beyond that of his peers. In addition, while dodging, he used electric current to stimulate rapid contraction of his muscles. Iroha's attack seemed to be in slow motion in his eyes. The contempt in his eyes was gone, replaced by solemnity. Hyuga, Iroha said solemnly. Hyuga Satoru, I admit that you surprised me a lot, but can you still dodge this next move? Oh, Hyuga raised his eyebrows. Gentle fist. 8 trigrams. 32 palms. Putting on a strange posture, Iroha's momentum was like a rainbow, and his hands were like running water as he attacked crazily. Quickly turning sideways to avoid Iroha's attack, Hyuga Satoru had a hint of surprise on his face. 8 trigrams 32 palms can only be mastered by genin. From this point of view, Iroha, who played a minor role in the original work, can be considered a genius. After all, in the original work, he was already a jonin when he met the prince. There is no mediocre person in Konoha who can become a jonin. After thinking about this, Hyuga Satoru sighed in admiration. Good. This slight compliment seemed to explode in Iroha's ears, causing his face to turn red while he was attacking, and he clenched his teeth slightly. You. How dare you humiliate me? Although Wrath is angry, he is powerless. Barely maintaining 8 trigrams 32 palms is already his limit. By the time this set of Gentle Fist is finished, his physical strength will be completely exhausted. But if the attack is terminated now, a flaw will inevitably be exposed, allowing Hyuga Satoru to seize the opportunity. I thought I could defeat Hyuga Satoru neatly with this move, but I didn't expect it and put myself in a difficult situation. After dodging the incoming Gentle Fist again, Hyuga Satoru turned slightly sideways, the thunder of his right palm flashed slightly, and he stamped on Iroha's chest with lightning speed. Blue arcs of electricity exploded at the intersection, and with a dull roar, Iroha's body flew backwards like a kite with its string cut off. There was dead silence. Enko was stunned. Uchiha Rin's eyes flashed. Was it that move? She seemed to have returned to that night when Hyuga Satoru slapped a palm on her chest and fell into the biting water of the Nanga River. Fujino Daikichi opened his mouth so wide that he could swallow an orange. Iroha struggled to support his body, his chest stung like a lightning strike, and his muscles were paralyzed and trembling uncontrollably. He wiped the blood that overflowed from the corner of his mouth, stared at Hyuga Satoru, and gritted his teeth. So you've been playing me. He didn't expect that the same race he had always despised would actually be far stronger than him. He had just uttered big words during the last battle, but now it was like a loud slap, hitting him hard on the cheek. I'm the clown myself. Iroha blushed and felt his cheeks burning. It seemed as if Hyuga Satoru's slap didn't hit him on the chest, but on his face. Are you Gentle Fist? This is Gentle Fist. Hyuga gave him a blank look. Iroha was stunned. He said it wasn't Gentle Fist. Hyuga Satoru said this is Gentle Fist. What is Gentle Fist? Iroha clenched his fists and wanted to retort, but he didn't know how to speak. How could this be Gentle Fist? My chest was numb, like an electric shock, and I flew so far with just one palm. You say this is Gentle Fist. But when he thought that he was easily defeated with just one palm, Iroha's eyes dimmed instantly. I lost. Win. Win. Hongdu opened her mouth blankly. If someone stuffed something weird into her mouth at this moment, I'm afraid she wouldn't notice it. Hyuga Wusheng. After a long time, in silence, Fujino Daikichi announced the result of the game. Uchiha Rin's pupils shrank slightly. Although she already knew that Hyuga Satoru was very strong, she was slightly surprised to defeat Iroha so calmly. This guy, it seems like that night was not his limit, didn't he? Then, the corners of her mouth suddenly curved. Not bad. Only with this kind of strength can you be qualified to be my opponent, Uchiha Rin. Obito stared blankly at Hyuga Satoru, who came back under countless pairs of shocked and admiring eyes, and agreed that we should be the shame of the family together. You will be embarrassed by Hyuga, and I will be embarrassed by Uchiha. Why did you become a genius in the blink of an eye, and I was the only one still embarrassing Uchiha? This isn't fair. When Hyuga Satoru came back, Anko asked in shock, Satoru, how did you do it? Hyuga raised his eyebrows and sighed. Where is the genius? I just spend the time when others are sleeping studying. Hongdu curled her lips. I believe you, I have never seen you not sleeping in class. Fujino Daikichi quickly recovered and announced the players for the next game. After all, They were ninjas who had been teaching for many years and had much more experience than ordinary ninjas. I actually made a mistake. That kid is not a loser, but a genius. But how did he defeat Iroha? That move was too fast, and it doesn't look like Gentle Fist. Fujino Daikichi couldn't think of his sister, and his eyes were filled with uncertainty. No, we still have to test this kid's limits. After a few students fought, he announced the candidates for the next game. Next game, Uchiha Rin vs Hyuga Satoru. The crowd was in an uproar. Oh my god, it's Uchiha vs Hyuga. Uchiha Rinko has always been a genius competing with Kakashi. Hyuga Satoru, can he do it? It's hard to say, although I defeated Iroha, Uchiha Rin is much more powerful. Hyuga Satoru's scalp was numb. It could be said that of all the people present, the one he least wanted to face was Uchiha Rin. Without him, it was naturally the experience of that night. Sure enough, when the two stood facing each other on the playground, Uchiha Rin's first words were, "Hyuga Satoru, do you still remember that night by the Nanga River?" Question mark, question mark, question mark. The playground instantly became quiet. Even Iroha, who had just been knocked away by Hyuga Satoru, was stunned. Everyone opened their mouths and stared at Hyuga Satoru and Uchiha Rin in disbelief. No way, no way, could it be that they? One Hyuga, one Uchiha. Stimulate. Some female classmates have already started to make crazy assumptions. Enko looked at Hyuga Satoru for a while, and then looked at Uchiha Rin, showing an anti-smile. What's going on with my deskmate and the female genius Uchiha? The atmosphere suddenly became anxious. Hyuga Satoru awkwardly dug out the 3 rooms and 1 living room with his toes. He really didn't expect Uchiha Rin to bring it up so blatantly. What is that night by the Nanhi River? Question mark, question mark, question mark. But Uchiha Rin obviously didn't care what Hyuga Satoru was thinking. His eyes narrowed and he suddenly threw several shurikens with both hands. In the air, the trajectories of the shurikens collided with each other, forming an airtight black net, blocking all the ways out for Hyuga Satoru. What an advanced throwing technique. Fujino Daikichi couldn't help but admire that even Uchiha Genin could rarely master this throwing technique that uses collision to change the trajectory of the shuriken. Facing the oncoming attack, Hyuga Satoru held a kunai to block it. An amazing scene appeared. No matter what angle the shuriken attacked from, Hyuga Satoru could always block or dodge easily, just like Shuriken is afraid of him. In the crowd, someone spoke dully. What nonsense are you talking about? The shuriken is lifeless, how can you be afraid of him? Didn't you notice? The man turned around. It's not that he is avoiding the shuriken, but the shuriken is avoiding him. The person who questioned took a closer look, and his mouth suddenly opened wide. He saw that when the shuriken was about to hit Hyuga Satoru, it would always change its trajectory slightly and move past him. This change allows Hyuga Satoru to still dodge freely when faced with overwhelming shuriken attacks. Could it be? Uchiha narrowed her eyes slightly, a terrible guess emerged in her mind, and then she showed doubts. It's impossible. He is from the Hyuga clan, so it shouldn't be possible. After knowing that the shuriken attack was useless, Uchiha Rin stopped throwing, holding a kunai in his hand, and shot Hyuga Satoru like a sharp arrow. Hyuga Satoru held a kunai to block at the same time, and the two fell into a physical battle. The more they fought, the deeper the surprise on Uchiha Rin's face. As expected, that night was indeed not your limit. That night by the Nanhi River, she was still able to fight with Hyuga Satoru in taijutsu, but now she was completely suppressed. Hyuga Satoru sighed. Isn't it obvious? There is still a gap between him and Uchiha Rin in terms of single-round combat experience, but the advantages of his Byakugan and physical speed allow him to steadily suppress his opponent. HMPH. If I activate Sharingan, you won't be so relaxed. Stubbornly spitting out a sentence, Uchiha Rin gritted his teeth slightly and stepped back sharply, giving up the idea of fighting taijutsu with Hyuga Satoru. Sharingan's eyes are much more difficult to open than her Byakugan. At this stage, she won't get any benefit from fighting Hyuga Satoru's taijutsu. While jumping back to distance himself, Uchiha Rin quickly formed seals with his hands, and a hot breath burst out of his mouth. Fire style. Great Fireball Jutsu. Ninjutsu. Fujino Daikichi's pupils shrank. At this stage, students who can use ninjutsu are undoubtedly geniuses, let alone sea-level ninjutsu like Great Fireball. Not good. The power of the Great Fireball was so great that Fujino Daikichi subconsciously wanted to step in and save Hyuga Satoru, but when he was distracted for a moment, the attack of the Great Fireball had already arrived. The orange-red fireball engulfed Hyuga Satoru's position, and the bursting flames scattered. The temperature of the entire playground became a bit hot, and the air became dry and scorched. Did it hit? There was a hint of hope in Uchiha Rin's eyes. Soon, the flames dissipated, and there was no one in the rising smoke. A faint voice came from behind her. Didn't I tell you that the Great Fireball belongs to immune to death? Behind. When pupils suddenly shrank, Uchiha Rin immediately adjusted his body to dodge, but it was too late. His back was like a lightning strike, blue arcs exploded in his vest, and his whole body flew forward in the strong impact. Hyuga Satoru shook his hand and looked at Uchiha Rin, who had fallen to the ground. This battle was not without thrills. Uchiha Rin's strength put him under considerable pressure. Fortunately, the Great Fireball moved too long in front of the move, so he could use the cover of the flames to get around to the rear and finish the move. Are you okay? Seeing Uchiha Rin lying motionless on the playground, Hyuga Satoru stepped forward. A sudden change occurred. Whoosh! Uchiha Rin suddenly raised his hand, and a kunai shot towards Hyuga Satoru instantly. However, a second before the hit, the trajectory of the kunai suddenly changed and passed by his face in an arc. Magnet style. Sure enough, you have awakened the twin blood successors. On the ground, Uchiha Rin's eyes flashed. In an instant, the crowd was excited. Double blood successor. Magnet style. What is that? Double blood successor. Fujino Daikichi opened his mouth in shock. In more than 20 years of teaching, he had only heard about the double blood successors but had never seen them. There is such a thing as the blood succession limit. Having one can make you stand out from the crowd. Having two at the same time is too scary. But the scene where the trajectory of the kunai changed before it hit Hyuga Satoru was too clear. In this case, there was only one possibility. Magnet style. As the Hyuga clan already has a Byakugan blood successor, and after awakening the magnet style, there is no doubt that it will be a double blood successor. Fujino Daikichi's eyes flickered. The double blood successor is of great importance and must be reported to the Hokage immediately. There was constant commotion in the crowd. Oh my god, what are the double blood successors? It should be that he has two blood inheritance limits. I never thought that such a ninja would exist. Even Kakashi, who had always been calm, had a touch of shock in his eyes after hearing this word. He looked straight at Hyuga Satoru in the playground. After being taught by White Fang, he understood the meaning of double blood inheritance better than ordinary people. What are you wearing? Iroha, who was previously injured by Hyuga Satoru, covered his chest and looked at the figure standing in front of Uchiha Rin. The shock in his eyes was unparalleled. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. In the history of the Hyuga clan for nearly 1,000 years, there has never been a ninja with two blood successors. The Byakugan is already one of the strongest eye skills. How can anyone awaken other blood successors? He suddenly thought that the palm that Hyuga Satoru used to defeat him earlier was also a move developed using magnet style. But I've never heard of magnet style having such an ability. Satoru, so powerful. Enko glanced around, looking at the shocked looks of everyone around her, and couldn't help but become curious. Hokage room. A pile of documents were piled messily on the table. Hiruzen Sarutobi held a cigarette holder with a serious look on his face and was immersed in processing the documents. Suddenly, a figure appeared out of thin air next to the Hokage table, with an animal mask on his face and his body wrapped in black clothes. Explain. Without raising his head, Sarutobi Hiruzen spat out a bite. Lord Hokage. Anbu bowed slightly. Fujino Daikichi, the instructor of Class A of the ninja school, reported information that a Hyuga branch house student he taught has awakened the magnet style and has a double blood successor. The movements of Sarutobi Hiruzen's hands were concentrated, and there was a touch of surprise in his eyes, and he looked up at the Anbu. Is the news true? True. Sarutobi Hiruzen remained silent. Fujino Daigui knows this. He has been teaching at the ninja school for nearly 20 years and is the oldest teacher in the group. From his perspective, he should not be able to make mistakes in this kind of information. Then there is only one possibility. Sarutobi Hiruzen narrowed his eyes slightly. That Hyuga clan student had really awakened the twin blood successors, but he frowned. This seemed impossible. Although ninjas with double blood successors are quite rare in the ninja world, there are still some. There have been double blood successor ninjas in Kurigaku's history, but this is the first time he has heard of the double blood successors of the Hyuga clan. The Byakugan of the Hyuga clan is already the limit of blood inheritance. It seems that no one in history has ever awakened other blood inheritance abilities. Magnet style. Is this the blood successor from Tsunagaku's side? Could it be that child's parents? Ahem. Sarutobi Hiruzen knew that he had lost his temper. The Hyuga clan had never intermarried with foreign clans, so it seemed that there was only one possibility. Gene mutation. Give me all the information about that Hyuga student, and also inform the Hyuga clan leader. Since he is a member of their Hyuga clan, they will naturally investigate. Yes. The figure at the Hokage table disappeared. Exhaling a long puff of white mist, Sarutobi Hiruzen bit his cigarette holder and leaned back on the chair, with a hint of exhaustion on his face. Double blood successor. If nothing happens, your future achievements will be limitless. It's a pity, it's a branch house. Hyuga clan land. As soon as today's assessment ended, Hyuga Satoru returned home, and the branch house guards immediately found him and asked him to go to the family hall. Hyuga didn't change his face after realizing it. It came so fast. If he reveals some of his abilities, he will inevitably be scrutinized by his family. It is impossible that the ability of electromagnetic force will not be used. Once used in the future, it will be very troublesome to explain. It is better to use this assessment to rationalize the ability of electromagnetic force. As for the consequences, Hyuga Satoru has already considered it. Because it is a branch house, I am afraid that Sarutobi Hiruzen will not be able to interfere and can only let the clan handle it by themselves. As for Danzo, why does the old man need a branch house when he has nothing to do? The priority of the caged bird is to eliminate the evil. Doesn't this mean running naked in front of the clan? Therefore, the much-loved Sarutobi, you will regret it. And, Danzo, I am the Hokage. Links that I love to see this time may not appear. Following the branch house guards, Hyuga Satoru came to the clan ancestral hall, which is where the Hyuga clan holds meetings. The only people who can enter are the clan and higher status ninjas in the branch house. After traveling through time for so long, Hyuga Satoru came here for the first time, and he couldn't help but look around curiously. Compared with other places in Hyuga, the decoration here is more strict, revealing a majestic posture. There are several tufts placed under the ancestral hall, with several middle-aged people sitting cross-legged, and a young man standing next to them. The branch house guard took a step forward, knelt down, and said respectfully to the man in the middle, "Chief, he is here." Clan leader. Hyuga Satoru looked at the man curiously. He was wearing a white robe. Although he had white hair on the temples, his white eyes were full of energy and were staring at him. This person should be the current patriarch of the Hyuga clan. I heard that his name seems to be Hyuga Suigetsu. The young man standing next to him should be Hyuga Hiyashi, but in the current timeline, he has not yet become the clan leader. Hyuga Satoru analyzed in his mind. Seeing that Hyuga Satoru was not afraid at all when he saw him, but instead looked him up and down, Hyuga Suigetsu frowned and spoke first. Your name is Hyuga Satoru, right? I heard that you have awakened the second blood successor realm. Yes. Hyuga Satoru nodded. Magnet style. Yes. There was a brief silence in the ancestral hall. After a moment of silence, Hyuga asked in a deep voice, in the history of our clan for nearly 1,000 years, there has never been a double-blooded ninja. How did you awaken? The rest of the people also turned their attention to Hyuga Satoru, waiting for his answer. Hyuga Satoru shook his head. I don't know either. When did you wake up? Hyuga Suigetsu continued to ask. When the news of my father's death came, I felt like the sky was about to collapse and something was about to explode in my head. I lay in bed for a few days, and when I woke up, I found that I felt a little uncomfortable. It's different. At that time, I didn't know that I had awakened magnet style. Later, I slowly discovered that I had some other abilities. Hyuga Wu gurgled as he narrated. Hyuga Shueyu and the others looked at each other, their expressions constantly changing. Long before Hyuga Satoru arrived, all the information about him had been placed in front of several people. Naturally, they also knew about Hyuga Satoru's family situation. His mother died in childbirth and his father died in the line of duty as a branch house guard. The information seemed to be it was mentioned that Hyuga Satoru became ill after his father's death, but it was not that specific. So you are saying that you were awakened by severe emotional turmoil after the death of your parents. Why is he the only one who has awakened and has a genetic mutation? The expression on Hyuga Satoru's face remained unchanged, but he sneered in his heart. He inherited the memory of his predecessor, and naturally knew that he fell ill after his father's death, which could be used as an excuse. Hyuga does not marry outsiders, and there is no doubt about his identity and bloodline. His parents have died long ago, and there is no evidence of his death. In any case, the only explanation is genetic mutation. In addition, the caged bird on his forehead cannot pose a threat to the Zong family in any case, so the outcome of this matter is doomed. Sure enough, Hyuga Suigetsu nodded after being silent for a long time, obviously agreeing with Hyuga Satoru's statement. Just when Hyuga Satoru breathed a sigh of relief, Hyuga Suigetsu suddenly raised his head and stared at him. Since you have awakened the new blood successor a long time ago, why have you never gone to the family training ground to practice, and why have you never notified the clan? The atmosphere in the sect hall was surprisingly depressing, and the air seemed to solidify. Hyuga Suigetsu and the others kept their eyes locked on Hyuga Satoru. After a moment of silence, Hyuga realized, I also want to go to the family training ground, but most of the people who go to train are Chunin and Genin. I'm not even a ninja. How can I possibly compete with them? I can only train at my own home every day. Magnet Style's blood inheritance ability was developed by me recently. Before that, I knew very little about the limits of blood inheritance. My parents died early, and I was left to live alone, and I didn't have the energy to think so much. Quote. After finishing speaking, Hyuga Satoru fell silent. In this case, the best way is to act stupid and pretend to be dumb. Anyway, he is a little transparent in the family. Even if the clan has information about him, it will never be much. After hearing this, Hyuga Suigetsu and several elders around him looked at each other. Indeed, they had already investigated Hyuga Satoru's situation. If it weren't for the two blood successors, he was the most insignificant person in the family. Usually, almost no one will notice him. Nodding, Hyuga Shueyu's voice was a little gentler. Since you have awakened the second blood successor, no matter what, you will not be allowed to live the previous life again. From today on, your living expenses will be tripled. Thank you, Patriarch. Hyuga Satoru bowed and thanked him, which was an unexpected surprise. Then, Hyuga Shueyu's eyes suddenly became sharper, and he changed the subject. I heard that you have contempt for Gentle Fist, and you have also tampered with the basic Gentle Fist method without authorization. Is this true? The clan hall fell into silence again. Hyuga was silent. Needless to say, this was naturally a tip made by Iroha. Yes, there was a trace of displeasure in Hyuga Shueyu's eyes, and he frowned. The reason why our clan has been standing in the ninja world for thousands of years is because of the foundation of Gentle Fist and Byakugan. The foundation of Gentle Fist cannot be tampered with, do you understand? Hyuga thought for a moment and asked tentatively. Clan leader, I would like to ask, the Gentle Fist has allowed my Hyuga clan to stand in the ninja world for thousands of years, but has the Gentle Fist changed over the years? Hyuga Suigetsu thought for a while. Although Gentle Fist has evolved since its birth, it has since become fixed and has become the most suitable move for our clan. It can cope with all changes. It has been like this for hundreds of years. Lord Patriarch, I learned about tailed beasts from the notes left by my father. I wonder if Gentle Fist can deal with tailed beasts. What do you want to say? Hyuga Suigetsu frowned slightly. Hyuga paused and spoke softly. Gentle Fist has its limits. Enough. Hyuga Suigetsu interrupted him dissatisfied. We, the Hyuga clan, have been able to stand up to this day because of the foundation of Gentle Fist and Byakugan. Don't think that you can take other paths after awakening Magnet Style. Let me tell you, Magnet Style is worthless compared to Gentle Fist. The branch house guard next to Hyuga Satoru bowed tremblingly, with helplessness and bitterness on his face, and a drop of cold sweat slid down his forehead. He didn't understand why Hyuga Satoru mentioned this topic. He knew that the elders of the clan were too sensitive to Gentle Fist. Hyuga Satoru sighed inwardly, not to mention that Gentle Fist has almost no long-range capabilities, and the distance of its only air hand is also quite limited, which limits the upper limit of Gentle Fist. The most important is, the solidified Gentle Fist training has almost eliminated the possibility of Hyuga ninjas developing other abilities of Byakugan. A white-eyed blood successor with the ability to see several kilometers was forced to become a scout by Hyuga. Gentle Fist may have been the foundation for Hyuga to stand in the ninja world, but now, it is the shackles of the Hyuga clan, like a caged bird. Only by breaking this shackles can Hyuga break and stand up. Hyuga Shueyu waved his hand impatiently. Okay, this matter is over here, you can go back. Yes. After Hyuga Satoru and the branch house guard left, Hyuga Suigetsu looked at the young man behind him and asked in a deep voice. Hiyashi, what do you think of that Hyuga Satoru? Hyuga Hiyashi is a descendant of Hyuga Suigetsu who is very optimistic about him. He has always kept him by his side and trained him as his heir. Hiyashi thought for a while and said, since he is the first double-blooded ninja in the history of Hyuga, his future development will definitely be good. However, the lack of attention to Gentle Fist may become an obstacle on his path. Hyuga Suge snorted coldly. I gave up studying Gentle Fist and instead studied some crooked ways. The achievements will definitely be limited. After all, it is just a branch house. Hearing the last sentence, Hyuga Hiyashi opened his mouth to say something, but fell silent in the end. Outside the clan hall, the branch house guard wiped the sweat from his forehead and looked at Hyuga Satoru anxiously. Woo, you are so brave. You actually dare to accuse Gentle Fist in front of the clan leader. Hyuga Satoru's eyes flickered. This was his first contact with the senior officials of the Zong family. The stubborn corruption of the Zong family was clearly visible. He knew that Gentle Fist could be improved, but he was stubborn and rigid and insisted on the immutability of the ancestral methods. But it was not without its benefits. After today, it is estimated that the clan leader still treats him with contempt, which is conducive to his development of electromagnetic power. Dispersing his thoughts, Hyuga scratched his head and looked at the branch house guard with a smile. Thank you for your concern, uncle. By the way, I don't know your name yet. Hyuga Hiragi, just call me Uncle Hiragi. Okay, Uncle Hiragi. Hyuga Hiragi seemed to have remembered something, looking into the distance with a trace of nostalgia on his face. Before your father passed away, he also performed missions with me. Although we didn't talk much, we can see that he was a very honest person. I have too many tasks every day. Apart from distributing the pension to you, it is difficult to communicate with you too much. But if you have any questions about cultivation in the future, you can come to me. Thank you, Uncle Hiragi. Hyuga Satoru said with a smile. Hyuga Hiragi is Jonin. Even if he doesn't follow the Gentle Fist system, he should still have somewhere to ask for advice. The next day, when Hyuga Satoru came to school, he found that the eyes of his classmates had changed. Shock, envy, admiration, jealousy, various emotions were mixed in the eyes, and they were all directed at Hyuga Satoru. Hyuga Satoru saw Iroha looking at him with complicated eyes. When he found himself looking at him, he immediately turned back, unwilling to look at him. As soon as he sat down on his seat, he saw Hongdu next to him curiously leaning his face towards her. Hey, Satoru, are you really the double-blood successor they say you are? Of course. Hyuga rolled his eyes at her. I didn't expect that someone would have two blood inheritance limits at the same time. It's incredible. I thought one was the limit. Are you stupid for eating sweets every day? There were double-blooded ninjas in Kurigakure village before. Although they are rare, they are not extinct. How about reading more books? If Anko had been ridiculed by Hyuga Satoru like this before, she would have immediately retorted dissatisfiedly, but now that she found out that he was a double-blooded successor genius, she just nodded quietly and said, oh. At this moment, Hyuga Satoru noticed that someone was walking towards here. When he looked up, he saw that it was Uchiha Rin. Is there a problem? Hyuga Satoru's voice was not loud. After all, after what happened that night at the Nanga River, he was worried that Uchiha Rin still had a grudge and came here to cause trouble. Uchiha Rin said calmly, have a fight after school. Hyuga Satoru, no way, no way. As for that, elementary school students have a date after school. As if aware of the inappropriateness of his wording, Uchiha thought about his words. I'm not willing to lose to you last time. I've learned some new ninjutsu. Let's try it again after school. Hyuga Satoru breathed a sigh of relief and couldn't help but cursed. Brother, you can just compete. What does it mean to have a fight after school? Compared to Kakashi, you are a more suitable opponent. Uchiha looked at him straightly. Do you want to use me as your opponent for training? Hyuga Satoru smiled bitterly in his heart. What a scroll king. You used to roll Kakashi, but now you find that I am better than Kakashi, so you turn around and roll me. After pondering for a moment, Hyuga looked at her and pondered. Do you want to use me as your opponent for training? It's an interesting idea, but it's not impossible. Uchiha Rin's face was filled with joy. So you agree? It's hard to be happy so quickly. Hyuga rolled his eyes at her. I can fight you again, but if you lose, you must agree to one of my conditions. One condition. Uchiha Rin frowned. May I know what the terms are? No. Hyuga Satoru shook his head. This is what makes a bet. Uchiha Rin frowned. Then if you ask me to do something weird, I have to agree. Hearing these words, Hyuga Satoru's expression suddenly froze. If he had been drinking water just now, he might have shot Uchiha Rin directly in the face. Well, then, he showed a thoughtful look. Uchiha Rin clenched his fists, gritted his teeth slightly, and his forehead seemed to have a tic-tac-toe bulge. Asshole, don't think about it seriously. Ahahaha, just a joke, just a joke. Hyuga Satoru smiled coquettishly. He felt the aura condensed into ice on Uchiha Rin's body, and it seemed that he would pounce on him in the next second and eat him alive. Enko looked at Hyuga Satoru for a while, and then looked at Uchiha Rin, who was silent. He grinned slightly, showing a smile of anticipation and playfulness. Don't worry, I can guarantee that this condition won't involve anything weird. If you think it's too much, you can even refuse it directly. Hyuga Satoru said seriously. Uchiha Rin thought for a moment and raised his head. Okay, it's a deal. After school, Uchiha Rin followed Hyuga Satoru to the grove in the back mountain. The stream of Nanga River flowed smoothly in the woods. The afterglow of the setting sun fell along the gaps in the treetops and fell on the dead leaves on the ground. It was so pleasant. Because he was defeated by Hyuga Satoru at the Nanga River last time, Uchiha Rin strongly proposed the idea of fighting at the Nanga River again. Of course, this location is still far away from the Uchiha tribe. No one will come and disturb them. Do you usually practice here? Why don't you go to the family's training ground? Uchiha Rin glanced around, staring at Hyuga Satoru with a hint of curiosity in his eyes. Hyuga Satoru sighed. You know, in a long-standing big family like Hyuga, there will always be a lot of rules within it. Here, I can be more free. Uchiha Rin thought of some stubborn elders in the family and nodded in agreement. Indeed, it is for this reason that I chose to practice beside the Nanhi River. She looked at Hyuga Satoru in front of her, and suddenly felt that there were some similarities between the two. The afterglow of the setting sun spreads on the Nanhi River next to it, and golden fragments flow with the water. In the silence, Uchiha Rin spoke first. Let's start. Chapter 11. As soon as Uchiha Rin finished speaking, he suddenly waved his palms. Along with several sounds of splitting the air, several kunai quickly flew towards Hyuga Satoru, aiming at his vital parts. Wooden. After seeing the material of kunai clearly, Hyuga Satoru's pupils narrowed. Knowing that I can control metal, did you replace all the ninja tools with wooden ones in advance? After thinking about this, Hyuga Satoru had a solemn look on his face, and turned his body backwards, narrowly avoiding all kunai attacks. Uchiha Rin reached for the ninja bag on his waist and threw out a bunch of wooden kunai again. These kunai collided with each other in the air and changed their trajectories, turning into a large airtight net that swept away. Hyuga Satoru was shocked that he actually used the Uchiha throwing technique on wooden kunai. You must know that the rebound coefficients of metal and wood are completely different. The same throwing technique, the wooden one is much more difficult. I didn't get any benefit from using this trick last time, so now I have to use wood to do the same thing again. Hyuga Satoru smiled bitterly. What a role king. One can imagine how much effort Uchiha Rin put into training behind the scenes in order to repeat this move with a wooden kunai. Holding the metal kunai in his hand, Hyuga Satoru stepped back while blocking the incoming kunai. Fortunately, his reaction speed was greatly improved by the activation of electric current, and he was more than enough to deal with this kind of attack. Looking around from the corner of his eye, he saw that the place where Uchiha Rin was standing before was already empty. There was a sound of breaking through the air beside him, and his slender calves swept over, with his toes pointed directly at his chest. Hyuga Satoru ducked sideways, his toes scratched across his chest, and the wind roared in his legs. "Are you getting serious?" Sensing the pressure, Hyuga Satoru did not dare to take it lightly, opened his Byakugan, and entered a fighting state. The snapping sound of flesh colliding continued to echo in the woods, causing the leaves on the big trees to fall off one by one and fall to the ground. "Why don't you use Gentle Fist?" Uchiha asked curiously. "I don't like that thing very much. Gentle Fist is rigid and has too many limitations." Hyuga blocked Uchiha Rin's calf with his palm, and used his right fist to hit the root of her thigh, forcing her to retreat. "But if I break down the boxing techniques and attack the weak points, it will be more suitable for my rhythm." Uchiha Rin nodded. If it were a regular Gentle Fist, a single attack routine might not oppress her that much, but Hyuga Satoru's attacks were unstructured, and every blow hit her weak point. Instead, it made her a little confused. Seeing that there was no benefit from getting closer, Uchiha jumped back a step, opened the distance between him and Hyuga Satoru, and formed seals with his hands at the same time. After seeing the order of the seals, Hyuga raised his eyebrows and said with some contempt, "You still dare to use the Great Fireball? Didn't the lesson last time be enough?" However, as if Uchiha Rin didn't hear his words, he took a sharp breath and spit out a blazing orange fireball instantly. Hyuga Satoru was shocked. The location where the Great Fireball attacked was not him, but the open space between him and Uchiha Rin. Due to the greatly shortened attack distance, the Great Fireball hit the ground in an instant. Orange flames swept through the fallen leaves and flew away. Gray-black smoke mixed with sparks exploded, swallowing up Hyuga Satoru suddenly. Hyuga realized that he could not immediately jump back to dodge. That is, just when he exited the range of the flame explosion, a cold wind suddenly came from behind. Before he had time to react, slender arms wrapped around his upper body, controlling his hands and body together, and a wooden kunai was aimed at his throat. Uchiha Rin held the wooden kunai aimed at Hyuga Satoru's throat, with a hint of arrogance on her pretty face, and her lips vomited softly. "I won. Hee. Taking advantage of my contempt for the Great Fireball, I attacked the ground and exploded with flames, forcing me to dodge hastily. Then predict my footing position in advance and sneak around behind me to attack. Although the main reason is because I was careless and didn't dodge." However, Hyuga Satoru couldn't help but praise Uchiha Rin's fighting thinking, which is probably no weaker than that of ordinary genin. "But, you want to defeat me just by using this method. Your idea is a bit too simple." The corners of his mouth curled up slightly. "Are you still forgetting about another blood inheritance limit?" Uchiha Rin's pupils narrowed slightly, as if she remembered something. Her perspective moved slightly downwards, and a chill suddenly rose up her spine. She saw a metal shuriken floating at her throat, spinning slowly. When her voice was trembling, and she was no longer as arrogant as before. "The moment your Great Fireball exploded, I used magnet style to control 4 shurikens floating around. As soon as you appear, these shurikens will definitely take away your life. To put it simply, I predicted that you predicted my prediction." Hearing this, Uchiha Rin searched and found 3 other slowly rotating shurikens floating around her body. Magnet style, what a terrifying ability. "I lost." The kunai was weakly removed from Hyuga Satoru's throat, and Uchiha Rin's eyes no longer had the color before, only loss and shock remained. "Hey, don't give up on yourself. After all, your Sharingan hasn't awakened yet. If you have Sharingan, the result is really hard to say." Worried that the other party would give up on himself, Hyuga Satoru couldn't help but comfort him. "You don't need to comfort me, I'm not that fragile yet." Glancing coldly at Hyuga Satoru, the previous color reappeared in Uchiha Rin's eyes. "Tell me, what are your conditions?" Uchiha Rin put the wooden kunai back into the ninja bag on his waist and stared at Hyuga Satoru coldly. Before the battle, she agreed to Hyuga Satoru's conditions. Since she lost, she naturally had to fulfill the contract. She thinks she still has some spirit of contract. "But let's agree in advance, if you dare to make any excessive demands." Uchiha bit her lip. Even if it means risking my life, I will kill you. No, no, no. Sensing the coldness in Uchiha Rin's voice, Hyuga Satoru touched his head and smiled. Then, he took out a blueprint from his arms and handed it to Uchiha Rin. Do you, the Uchiha clan, have a good relationship with the Ninja Cat clan? The Cat Granny in the Ninja Cat clan is one of the largest ninja tool merchants in the ninja world. I would like to ask you to help me customize this thing, and I will pay you the price. Uchiha Rin was stunned. She took the drawing, which was a weapon similar to a crossbow, but it was different from anything she had seen before. That's it. Uchiha Rin raised his head and looked at Hyuga Satoru in astonishment. What do you think? Hyuga gave her a blank look. He has basically asked all the ninja tools shops in Konoha. It is very difficult to customize such a precise electromagnetic gun. The Uchiha clan has good relations with the largest ninja tool dealer in the ninja world, Neko Granny, and Konoha has the greatest shortage of ninja tools, of a clan. To put it bluntly, it's just using Uchiha Rin's connections. This matter is all taken care of by me. No need for money or anything else. It's a trivial matter. Uchiha Rin said very generously. Really? Thank you Rin then. Hyuga Satoru was stunned for a moment. Uchiha Rin's words directly made him embarrassed. He asked about the price in advance. This set of weapons was customized and had a minimum guarantee of tens of thousands taels. He originally planned to let Uchiha Rin use his friendship as a classmate to get a cheaper price. Unexpectedly, Uchiha Rin just asked for no money. This guy, could she still be a rich woman? Hyuga Satoru's eyes lit up. Why are you looking at me like that? Uchiha Rin looked at him doubtfully. Without, Hyuga Satoru swallowed his saliva. Uchiha Rin was the kind of little Lolita with long black hair and straight hair who was a bit cold. This look made his heartbeat suddenly accelerate a bit. At this moment, a voice sounded in his head. You can't be a titled Duluo. But I have a doubt. Uchiha Rin said hesitantly. Why is your magnet style so powerful? I remember that ordinary magnet style can't control shurikens and kunai so freely, right? Otherwise Sunagakur village wouldn't be the weakest of the 5 major villages. Hyuga Satoru thought for a while. I don't know, each magnet style seems to have different abilities. Maybe my magnet style is more sensitive to metals like shuriken. Really? Uchiha frowned. She has read through the family's collection of books and has a certain understanding of magnet style. The strongest ninja in magnet style at that time was the 3rd generation Kazekage of Hidden Sand Village. The secret technique of sand iron can even suppress one tail, and is known as the strongest Kazekage in history. But this title is obviously flawed. His magnet style ability is to control sand and iron, which only slightly interferes with metal ninja tools. It is impossible to control it as freely as Hyuga Satoru. The ability to control metal ninja tools would be so terrifying if it grows up, Uchiha Rin can't even imagine. Which ninja doesn't carry metal shurikens and kunai? If I hadn't replaced all my ninja tools with wooden ones today, I might have lost in one face-to-face encounter. Looking at Uchiha Rin's absent-minded look, Hyuga Satoru naturally guessed what she was thinking, but if she knew that the ability he showed was just the tip of the iceberg, who knows how shocked she would be. If Magnet Style's ability is like a leaf, then electromagnetic force is like an ancient tree that blocks out the sky and the sun. Whether it is the Magnet Style native to the ninja world, or the abilities he has developed now, they are just a few insignificant leaves on that ancient tree. As the 4 basic forces of the universe, it is unimaginable how terrifying it would be to fully master them. After the battle with Uchiha Rin, his experience value has reached more than 1900, and there are only a few dozen points left to upgrade to 2000 experience points. When I reach LV2, I should be able to obtain a new electromagnetic force system ability. What will it be? Hyuga Satoru thought curiously. There happens to be a holiday later, so I don't have to go to the ninja school, so I can try to make a breakthrough. After returning home, Hyuga Satoru hoarded a lot of supplies, locked himself in the room, and started a training plan to hit the level of electromagnetic force. Almost at the same time, a small earthquake suddenly occurred within the Hyuga family, which has been passed down for nearly 1,000 years. For the first time, a tribesman awakened the second blood successor, Magnet Style. This was the first time in an ancient and lawful family like Hyuga. At first, not many people believed this statement, but later on, more and more people spread the rumor, forcing them to pay attention to it. Hey, have you heard that a clan member awakened the second blood successor and defeated the genius of the Uchiha family? You just heard that, didn't you? Defeat Uchiha with one move. Didn't Uchiha get so frightened that he knelt down and begged for mercy when he heard about the double-blooded successor? So someone found Iroha, but no matter how they asked, the other party remained silent, but judging from his performance, he acquiesced. Since then, Hyuga has been on fire. Can we also awaken the second blood successor? In addition to the Byakugan, are there other blood successor abilities in the Hyuga bloodline? Such remarks continued to appear among the Hyuga clan. In the end, it was the elders of the clan who came forward and claimed that Hyuga Satoru's situation was special and not universal, so the situation was calmed down. Many tribesmen were curious to know about the tribesman with the double blood successor, but were surprised to find that the tribesman seemed to have suddenly jumped out. They had never heard of him before. From time to time in the training ground and in the corners of the houses, some branch houses can be seen gathering together, whispering and discussing the branch house geniuses they have never seen before, who have awakened the second blood successor. It was not until the passing clan coughed in dissatisfaction that they hurriedly became quiet. Calm down. It's just that those branch houses may never have imagined that the rightful owner in their mouths is shutting himself in the room at this moment, going through an extremely harsh training. The cramped space was filled with the smell of fermented sweat, and various metal props were placed in a mess. Hyuga Satoru, who was sweating profusely, was breathing heavily, with a look of joy in his eyes. Success. Just now, he suddenly heard a slight breaking sound coming from his body, and then he heard a voice coming from his ear. Electromagnetic force LV2 distance to next upgrade experience value 0.006. As the level increased, Hyuga Satoru was surprised to find that his body seemed to be undergoing a transformation. He had experienced this feeling before, when he first awakened to electromagnetic force. However, now, it is much stronger than that time. The impurities of the physical body are decomposed by the electromagnetic force, and an extremely pure energy escapes and feeds back to the body itself. Although after several days of hard training, his body was full of filth, Hyuga Satoru was full of energy at this time, as if he had been given chicken blood, and he was in extremely good condition. Close your eyes and feel the changes in your body carefully. Soon Hyuga Satoru made a discovery. The biomagnetic field is much stronger than before. Hyuga Satoru opened his eyes in surprise. This discovery was not a big one. He had discovered the importance of biomagnetic field before. The complex life activities of the human body would create its own unique biomagnetic field. If the biomagnetic field is increased, it will feed back the life activities of the body. Hyuga had speculated before enlightenment that if the biomagnetic field was strong enough, it would reversely drive the evolution of the body and move into a higher level of life. He seems to be taking a small step closer to that route now. Is this the final direction of the development of electromagnetic force? A higher level of life? After groaning, Hyuga took a deep breath, suppressed the restlessness in his heart, and began to carefully feel his biomagnetic field. Although I can freely control the magnetic field of metals, the biomagnetic field of living objects cannot be manipulated at all. Obviously this corresponds to the higher level authority of electromagnetic force, which is not something I can touch now, but... Hyuga Satoru frowned slightly. The biomagnetic field in his body is like a small flame that is constantly burning. The warmth it emits nourishes his body, and this flame will adjust according to his state, keeping his body in the best condition, just like yes. Hyuga thought for a while and said to himself, the wet nurse gave me a permanent recovery buff. This is no longer something that can be summarized simply by biomagnetic fields. Well, just call him life magnetic field. Hyuga Satoru thought for a moment and gave this ability a name. The life magnetic field is obviously the new ability he awakened from electromagnetic force LV2. In addition, he has experimented again, and the intensity and accuracy of electromagnetic force manipulation have been greatly improved. The abilities he developed before will also be greatly improved, of enhancement. The electromagnetic force of LV1 should correspond to basic electromagnetic control. The electromagnetic force of LV2 corresponds to the magnetic field of life. So what are the abilities corresponding to the electromagnetic force of LV3, LV4, or even higher-level electromagnetic forces. Hyuga Satoru couldn't help but become curious and full of expectations for the future. The electromagnetic force path is like a pyramid composed of steps, constantly tempting him to explore and climb to the final peak. Guns teach people how to behave. In less than a week, Uchiha Rin handed him the custom-made metal crossbow. Hyuga Satoru was extremely excited and lamented that Uchiha Rin is indeed a person who keeps his promises. In such a short time, the ninja tool he needed had been made. After school, Hyuga Satoru came to the forest in the back mountain excitedly. He wants to try the power of the electromagnetic gun. When the electromagnetic gun was conceived, its electromagnetic power was only LV1. Now it has been upgraded to LV2. I wonder if the power will be stronger than expected. Hyuga Satoru opened the wooden box. Lying quietly inside was the ninja tool he expected. It looks like a metal crossbow, but it is very different. In the middle of the bow body, there is an acceleration track made of metal. The arrows fired are also special, with a slender shape and can easily be accelerated by magnetic fields. Hyuga Satoru took a deep breath to dissipate the excitement in his heart, then picked up a metal arrow and began to test it. The principle of the electromagnetic gun can be said to be very simple. The metal projectile undergoes electromagnetic acceleration in the magnetic field, thereby obtaining an extremely high initial velocity. The most critical thing is to accelerate this process, which is the so-called electromagnetic push. Hyuga Satoru remembers the arms race between Takajeong and Rabbit in his previous life, which included electromagnetic guns, and the main technical difficulty was also in the electromagnetic propulsion process. If you want to accelerate the artillery shell to the ideal power, the current required is very large. The Eagle is limited by this and has been unable to apply the electromagnetic gun to the aircraft carrier. On the other hand, Rabbit has overcome technical difficulties and far surpasses Yingjong in the application of electromagnetic guns. When the bow is stretched and the arrow is drawn, the blue current flows in the arm, building a pushing magnetic field, changing the magnetic field of the metal arrow, and obtaining greater acceleration. If it had been before when the electromagnetic force was LV1, Hyuga Satoru would never have been so easy to do this, but with the blessing of the electromagnetic force of LV2, he seemed to be able to do it smoothly. Byakugan has been opened, and a kilometer radius is visible. When the electromagnetic push reached its extreme, Hyuga Satoru released his fingers, a sharp explosion sounded instantly, and the bow and arrow turned into a blue arc and disappeared. Whoosh! I saw an arc of lightning passing by instantly. Hyuga Satoru opened his mouth instantly. The metal arrow almost exceeded the limit of his white eye's perspective, and like a thunderbolt, it sunk deeply into a big tree as thick as 3 people's arms. Within 1,000 meters, this shot is a great threat to any ninja. His rough calculation showed that the initial speed of the electromagnetic gun he developed was probably close to 3 times the speed of sound. The initial velocity of a conventional anti-instrument sniper rifle bullet is about 850 meters per second, which is still a short distance from 3 times the speed of sound. The initial kinetic energy is far behind this arrow. In terms of attack range, it is about 1,600 meters, which is similar to the effective range of conventional anti-machine sniper rifles. Any further, and the accuracy and power will decrease. At his current limit, he can achieve this step. When his electromagnetic power becomes stronger in the future, he won't be able to take off directly. Have you ever seen a sniper rifle that can control arrows to turn in flight and track them? Ninjas are all fragile, with high attack and low defense. They are caught off guard by ultra-long-range snipers. Except for the bloody bulls like Third Raikage, even the shadow-level experts may have to temporarily avoid the edge. Hyuga Satoru exhaled a breath and carefully recovered the arrow. This ability can be regarded as one of his trump cards in the future. On the way back, Hyuga Satoru felt much more relaxed. The shadow of the previous 3 battles had been oppressing him, preventing him from relaxing even a little bit. Now that a low-profile electromagnetic gun with considerable power has been developed, the life-saving ability has been greatly increased, and the tense mind has relaxed a little. Just when he was about to reach home, he suddenly stopped and frowned slightly. From a distance, he could see a figure standing at the originally empty doorway, as if he had been waiting there for a long time. Looking at the face that was very similar to that of Zongtang, Hyuga Satoru had a vague suspicion in his mind. The man smiled kindly at Hyuga Satoru. Let me introduce myself, my name is Hyuga Hazashi, can I chat with you? Hyuga Hazashi, as expected. Hyuga Satoru felt a chill in his heart. He walked past Hyuga Hazashi, opened the door, and looked back at Hyuga Hazashi. Hazashi-sama, come in and talk. Hyuga Hazashi followed Hyuga Satoru into the room and looked around curiously. He saw that the corner of the room was filled with worn-out metal products, and there was no other furniture except simple living utensils. I usually don't have time to tidy up the room because of my training. I hope you can forgive me, Hazashi-sama. Hyuga Satoru pulled out a chair and motioned for Hyuga Hazashi to sit down. Looking at Hyuga Satoru's maturity that belied his age, Hyuga Hazashi suddenly felt sad. He sighed and said, Untaki has been gone for so many years, you must have suffered a lot. Hyuga Satoru raised his eyebrows slightly. Hyuga Utaki is the father of the original body. It seems that Hyuga Hazashi knows him, but as a time-traveling Hyuga Satoru, his memory of him is quite vague. Seeing that Hyuga Satoru didn't speak, Hyuga Hazashi thought he was immersed in the pain of his father's death, so he said, I heard from the tribe that you awakened the second bloodstain because you were too sad about your father's death. The corner of Hyuga Satoru's mouth twitched slightly. He made this up in order to hide it from the gangsters in the sect. Unexpectedly, it had already spread, and even Hyuga Hazashi knew about it. Why haven't I seen you training with your clan members? Hyuga Hazashi asked. I have awakened the second bloodstain. I am considered a strange existence in the family. It is better to practice alone. Hyuga Satoru said that this was indeed his inner thought. The route he took was different from that of all the clan members, so it was better to have less contact with them. Unexpectedly, as soon as he finished speaking, he heard Hyuga Hazashi sigh and say with a hint of unwillingness, Do you think you were an alien after awakening the second bloodstain? No, I originally thought that the family was like a pool of stagnant water that would never change, until I heard about you. You who have awakened the second bloodstain are definitely not an anomaly, but a variable, proving that this decayed ancient tree of the Hyuga clan still has new vitality. Hearing Hazashi's words that obviously had a deeper meaning, Hyuga Satoru's expression became a little more solemn and he said, Hazashi-sama, why did you come here today? Hyuga Hazashi's emotions gradually calmed down, he shook his head and his voice became much softer. No, I just want to take a look at you and see the new green leaves growing among this decayed ancient tree. Maybe it's a little abrupt. He sighed and stood up from the chair. I'll take my leave now. If you have any cultivation needs in the future, you can come to me. Looking at Hyuga Hazashi's leaving figure, Hyuga Satoru's eyes changed complicatedly. In the original work, Hyuga Hazashi should have hated his status as a branch house so much that he was punished by his brother with a caged bird because he revealed his murderous intention to Hinata. In the end, he committed suicide on Hiyashi's behalf. No matter what it is, it can be seen that he hates Hyuga's corrupt system. Hyuga Satoru has a feeling that he will come to find him again. Even if it is for the variables in his mouth, the new green leaves among the decayed ancient trees. Time flies slowly, the sun and the moon fly by, and 2 years have passed in the blink of an eye. Hyuga Satoru has become a senior student at the ninja school. His strength has made great progress during his daily training with Uchiha Rin. But just half a year ago, he suddenly discovered that he could no longer gain experience points. To be precise, the experience value of electromagnetic force increases like a turtle crawling, with almost no trace of increase. Hyuga Satoru sighed. The boring day after day made it difficult for the electromagnetic force to get enough stimulation. If he wanted to upgrade, he had to change the environment. The pressure of 3 battles kept chasing him. Despite the powerful cheat, it's useless not to grow up as quickly as possible. Ichiraku Ramen. Uchiha Rin stared at Hyuga Satoru in front of him with a hint of surprise through the white steam rising from the noodle bowl. You want to graduate early? Hyuga Satoru nodded and said thoughtfully. Yes, although the ninja school provides a comfortable environment for us to practice, it is difficult to truly grow without experiencing the baptism of battle. It's hard to imagine that this sentence actually came out of your mouth. Uchiha Rin's expression became suspicious, and he looked up and down at Hyuga Satoru. What? Why are you looking at me like that? Hyuga shrank back uneasily. He planned to invite Uchiha Rin to graduate early with him. Otherwise, even if he graduated, he would not be able to perform tasks without his teammates, and he might as well hang out in school. No, ha ha ha, Uchiha Rin laughed. I can't wait for a long time. I'm almost getting rusty from being in this crappy school. Even if you don't mention it, I will bring it up. That's good. Hyuga Satoru breathed a sigh of relief. Uchiha Rin thought for a while and said, but we are still missing one person. If there are only two of us, we cannot form a three-person team. You don't have to worry about this. I also found Hongdu. Although her actual combat ability is not very strong, passing the assessment should not be a big problem. Anko, since he is someone Satoru approves of, I naturally have no objection. It is naturally better to team up with familiar people than strangers. Uchiha Rin nodded. She suddenly thought of Kakashi, and showed a rare hint of melancholy. About a year ago, a shocking news suddenly spread in the village. Kakashi's father, Hatake Tsukumo, the respected White Fang, abandoned his mission, causing the village to suffer huge losses. Soon after, another shocking news came that White Fang committed suicide. All the rumors of the past came to an abrupt end. After that incident, Kakashi chose to graduate early and became the youngest genin genius in the history of Konoha. But along with his reputation as a genius, there are rumors that Kakashi is at odds with his teammates from time to time. He graduated early and did not have any teammates at the same time, so he could only continue to join unfamiliar teams that lacked players. He did not cooperate well with his teammates, which caused many genin to be deeply resentful of him. The memories faded away, and Uchiha Rin laughed. It is said that he is about to become a chunin. Really, after letting him catch up for so long, I, Uchiha Rin, am finally going to show my strength. The news that the three of them were going to graduate early caused some uproar, but it subsided not long after. Needless to say, Uchiha Rin has been competing with Kakashi before he graduated. Although Hyuga Satoru always looks lazy, after all, the reputation of double bloodstain is there. However, Anko also chose to graduate early and was criticized by many classmates. Ridiculing oneself for not knowing one's own capabilities. Assessment site. As soon as Hyuga Satoru walked out of the door, he saw Uchiha Rin standing outside the door, crossing his arms and saying calmly, in terms of the speed of passing the test, I am 3 minutes faster than you. Is this also a comparison? Hyuga Satoru's mouth twitched. He looked back at the examination room. Now only Anko was left. If she could pass, there would be no need to worry about forming a team of 3. There is no need to worry about the 3 body skills and basic theoretical examinations. Graduating early adds a link to battle with genin. You must persist for a certain period of time. It is naturally not a problem for him and Uchiha Rin, but it will put a lot of pressure on Anko. In this atmosphere, time passed bit by bit, and Hyuga became anxious. The reason why he must team up with Anko is because he has his own considerations. If Caged Bird wants to crack it, in addition to his own strength, the best thing he can rely on is Orochimaru's scientific research. In the original book, Anko is Orochimaru's disciple, and he becomes a teammate with her. Maybe I can catch the Orochimaru line. Fortunately, it didn't take long before Anko walked out of the examination room with a lot of sweat on her face and smiled at Hyuga Satoru. Fortunately, I did not disgrace my life. Beautiful, Hyuga praised and gave a thumbs up. Since only 3 of them graduated at the same time in the same period, it was inevitable to be assigned to the same team. Then there was only one problem, waiting for the Generation Hokage to be assigned to lead the Team Jonin. Who could it be? Hyuga Satoru thought curiously. Arriving at a training ground at the prescribed time, Hyuga and Satoru and the others began to wait for the mysterious instructor Jonin. Satoru, what do you think the Hokage will arrange for us Jonin? Anko asked anxiously. I don't know. Hyuga shook his head, but his strength is definitely not weak. The quality of their team is not low. Needless to say, Uchiha Rin is also a genius. In the original work, Anko will be selected as a disciple by Orochimaru, so her talent is naturally not too bad. If he is not an excellent Jonin, nothing can be said about him. At this moment, a man wrapped in a wide robe walked towards him. He wore sunglasses and exuded an aura that was inaccessible to strangers. Hello, I am your guide Jonin, Aburame Shiwei. The voice is short and powerful, without any emotion. It's actually this guy. Uchiha Rin looked surprised. Do you know him? Hongdu looked at her. Of course, I have learned about the powerful ninjas in the village in advance. Uchiha Rin's eyes lit up. He is a very famous ninja in the Aburame clan. He is very proficient in the secret arts of the insect system, whether it is for reconnaissance, combat or support. Rigid, known as the all-powerful ninja. Bug. Anko shuddered. It seems you have gotten to know me. Aburame slightly pondered. Let me introduce myself now. My name is Aburame Jiwei. My favorite thing is bugs and I hate creatures that eat bugs. The whole body is covered with bugs, and his personality seems to be withdrawn. It seems that this instructor Jonin is not easy to get along with, Hyuga Satoru thought to himself. After thinking for a moment, he began to introduce himself. My name is Hyuga Satoru. I'm not particularly good at anything. If I have to say, I know a little bit about ninjutsu. I like to eat ramen and barbecue. As for my dream, well, it's the world's nuclear peace. Quote. World peace. As expected of you, woo. The corner of Hongdu's mouth twitched slightly. I remember you were talking about the finale when I entered school before. Interesting idea. Aburame nodded slightly. Although he was expressing admiration, there was still a gloomy tone in his tone. Is this the Hyuga Satoru that Hokage-sama asked me to pay attention to? The dual-blood successor, Magnet Style's first-generation successor, no matter which title he is given, is not simple. He actually has such a lofty dream as a Hyuga branch house. Interesting kid. My name is Uchiha Rin. I don't particularly dislike anything, and I don't particularly like anything. If I have to say it, it's training and fighting. Only the improvement of my strength will fill me with pleasure. Uchiha Rin's indifferent voice sounded, making Hyuga Satoru and Anko next to him look embarrassed. Uchiha, what a bunch of arrogant guys. The corners of Aburame Jiwei's mouth, which was covered by the wide robe, twitched slightly. Forget it, he's just a kid. My name is Mitarashi Anko. Hongdu weakly raised her hand and made a timid voice. There were two geniuses from wealthy families standing next to her, which put a lot of pressure on her. I like to eat sweets, especially glutinous rice balls. I hate people who hurt my companions the most. I know healing and hemostasis skills, and the bandages are also very beautiful. When everyone is injured, I will help you treat them and won't hold you back. Quote. A very caring ninja, completely different from the previous two weirdos. Aburame nodded slightly. Then the self-introduction session is over, and now comes the combat test. Aburame Jiwei waved his hand, and countless black insects flew towards him. The black insects were like a black cloud, overwhelmingly sweeping towards Hyuga and Satoru. Is this a fight? Don't you even give me a warning. Hyuga's scalp was numb, and he wanted to jump out of the insect swarm. Suddenly, there was a dense sound of insects from behind. In just a short moment, a large group of parasitic insects began to bite his back. If bitten by a parasitic bug, the chakra will be sucked dry. Behind the swarm, Aburame slightly pushed up the black sunglasses on his face. Let me see what you are capable of with this double bloodstain. However, just as he finished speaking, a burst of electric arc suddenly appeared on Hyuga's back. All the biting insects stiffened and fell to the ground with a crackling sound, giving off a burning smell. Lightning style. Has this guy learned lightning style? Aburame showed a slightly surprised look. Compared to Hyuga Satoru's calmness, the other two were not so relaxed. Uchiha Rin held a kunai in both hands and attacked the surrounding insect swarm. The sharp cold light flashed across, and the parasitic insect was divided into two. Gradually it was covered with a layer of insect stumps. But this trend did not last long, and soon there were small bites from parasites on her arms. Bugs, how disgusting. Uchiha looked disgusted. He gave up attacking the bugs, jumped back suddenly, jumped into the air from the swarm of bugs, and quickly formed seals with his palms. At the same time, a dense swarm of insects swept towards her, like a black mist. The hot chakra surged up from his throat. Uchiha Rin took a deep breath and sprayed out towards the black mist from midair. Fire style. Great fireball technique. The huge orange fireball instantly swallowed up the chasing insects, and blackened ashes fell from the sky, giving off a smell similar to barbecue. With his toes on the ground, Uchiha looked calmly at the insect corpses on the ground. Although that guy Satoru has been mocking that the great fireball can't kill people, I have to say that flames are still very lethal to such tiny bugs. Aburame Shi, who was behind the insect swarm, nodded slightly. Taijutsu ability A, ninjutsu A+, combat reflexes and quality are quite good. Only, he looked at Anko's position. In the black mist-like swarm of insects, Anko could only rely on kunai to continuously attack the surrounding insects. Dense red traces of insect bites could be seen on the exposed arms. After chakra, her movements also became tense. The ninja team is a team. No matter how good your individual abilities are, you still can't go far if you don't take your teammates into consideration. Aburame Jawei shook his head secretly. Even if Jonin is surrounded by his own parasitic insect attack, it will be difficult to escape. The fact that they can persist for so long is considered very good, but there seems to be a lot of room for improvement in terms of teamwork. Aburame Jawei silently analyzed the situation of several people and made plans for follow-up training. While he was deep in thought, the insects around him suddenly issued a warning. Just when I raised my head, before I could see anything clearly, my vision suddenly went dark. A shuriken wiped his throat cleanly. The pupils suddenly dilated. How? I have already taken precautions. When, as soon as the doubts arose, they dissipated immediately. The whole body suddenly swelled and exploded into countless black bugs flying in all directions. Saved. The surrounding insects stopped attacking, and Anko sat down on the ground, breathing heavily. Is everything okay? Hyuga Satoru pulled her up. It's okay, it's just a few marks on my arm. Anyway, I know the healing technique, so it won't have any impact. But where is the teacher? Anko looked around curiously. The dense black bugs were frozen in place, and Aburame Jawei had long disappeared. That guy was never around. Hyuga Satoru shrugged. A few hundred meters away on a big tree, Aburame Jawei scratched his hair in embarrassment. This is so embarrassing. I wanted to give them a show of strength, but I didn't expect that the insect clone was actually killed. Several people are geniuses, especially Uchiha Rin. If you don't show your skills, it will be difficult to suppress them. Use a bug clone to suppress them, attack and destroy their energy. When the time is right, you will appear on the stage and take back the clone in shock and admiration. A perfect debut performance, at least that's what he thought. However, the insect clone was killed. He recalled Sarutobi Hiruzen's instructions not long ago, and his face darkened. Lord Hokage, I have let you down. Jawei, I have a task for you. Lord Hokage, please speak. There are 3 students from the ninja school who graduated early. They are all good prospects. I want you to be their instructor. Master Hokage, you can let me kill people, but let's forget about instructing students. Alas, Jawei, I know that you Aburame clan don't like to be in contact with others, especially you. Every time you perform a mission, you have to fight alone. But after all, ninja is a teamwork profession, and teaching students is also for you. Experience. Jawei, don't let me down. All right. Aburame Jawei scratched his head in distress. Teaching students was not what he was good at in the first place, and the designed stage performance had completely failed. How could the insect clone suddenly die suddenly? Aburame Jawei was quite puzzled. Although he was just a clone, his strength was enough to rival that of an ordinary Jonin. The last picture the bug sent back was a shuriken. Magnet style. No matter how strong it is just a clone, and the crispy skin cannot be changed. The shadow clone next door explodes with a poke, and the insect clone is not much better. Aburame thought slightly, but at this distance, being able to control the shuriken through the dense insect swarm protection, and having the power to wipe out the insect clones with one blow, it seems that Hyuga Satoru's magnet style is much more powerful than he imagined. This kind of sinister ability is hard to guard against. The problem now is how to face the 3 of them, and Aburame Jawei has a headache. Why hasn't teacher Jawei shown up yet? At the training ground, Anko looked around among the downed insects, but couldn't find Aburame Jawei. Haven't you seen it yet? Uchiha Rin curled his lips. He is fooling us. He made a bug clone Yin Ren, but the real body doesn't know where it is hiding. Then we should fight or not? It's over halfway through. Have we passed the test? Hongdu started to ask 3 fatal questions. At this moment, a man wrapped in a wide robe jumped down from a tree not far away, walked towards the three people's position, waved his hand to collect the insects, and said, "You are all very nice. Being able to defeat one of my insect clones is quite good. You all passed the test." It was still the same gloomy voice, but the difference was that it was no longer as calm as before. "Hey, is it just a bug clone? I thought the teacher was so weak," Hongdo said with big eyes and small eyes. Aburame Jawei Crit X1. "Well, it's actually just a test, and you all passed it perfectly." Aburame Jawei, who was unwilling to give up, tried to save him. If he was so humiliated in the first meeting, how could he be a teacher in the future? Then the teacher will make the test a little more difficult next time. My body has just warmed up, it's boring. Uchiha Lin circled his shoulders a few times and said calmly. Aburame Jawei Crit X2. Kid, don't be so carried away. Aburame G gritted his teeth slightly, that's why I hate brats. It's too troublesome to instruct students. It's enough to have bugs. Uchiha Rin and Anko looked at Hyuga Satoru at the same time, and Hyuga Satoru thought for a while. It's quite weak. Aburame Jawei Crit X3. His fists were clenched involuntarily, and his hair seemed to tremble with anger. Aburame Jawei felt a surge of anger in his body, and when it was about to explode, it withered away as if a basin of cold water had been poured on it. All right. His tone became weak, and Aburame looked like a dead cucumber. This assessment is based on my mistakes. To compensate, I treat everyone to a barbecue as a celebration of the establishment of the third class. Okay, barbecue. Foodie Hongdu was the first to cheer, with tears streaming down her lips. Konoha, in the Akamaiki family's yakiniku restaurant. Aburame Jawei looked at the mountain of dinner plates piled up in front of him and began to doubt his life. Just 3 hours ago, in order to celebrate the establishment of the third team, he invited the members to have barbecue according to Konoha's practice. He originally thought it was just a simple dinner party, but soon, he discovered something unusual. Quick, too fast. Is this human food intake? When the barbecue was served, Hyuga Satoru seemed to have released the suppressed devil in his blood, and he ate it crazily. He had eaten most of the mountain of barbecue plates. On the other side, Hongbin is also feasting with open belly, and the number of roasted meats is rapidly decreasing visible to the naked eye. At this moment, the two of them were covering their bulging bellies and lying leisurely on the sofa to rest. It's 20,000 taels in total. Which of you will pay the bill? The chubby barbecue manager stood in front of the table at a loss with a calculated account book. 10,000. After hearing the price quoted by the store manager, Aburame Jawei felt like a thunderbolt hit his head, and his whole body turned to stone on his seat. Aburame gritted his teeth slightly and looked at Hyuga Satoru and Anko, both of whom were lying on the sofa to rest, with contented and happy faces on their faces. Well, how about I do it? Uchiha Rin took a sip of tea and asked tentatively. She was a little embarrassed, but she didn't need the money anyway. No, Aburame Jawei refused forcefully, and tremblingly took out a wad of brand new banknotes from his wallet. It was impossible for students to pay under any circumstances. This is his last dignity. Ah, my heart is bleeding. Welcome next time. The boss smiled and waved at the door. As soon as he walked out of the barbecue restaurant, Aburame Jawei immediately left the team on the grounds of mission. He was afraid that if he stayed any longer, his car would turn over even worse. That teacher Jawei is quite interesting. It seems different from the rumors. Uchiha Rin shrugged. It's quite interesting. When I saw his appearance, I thought he was a particularly difficult type to get along with, but I didn't expect. Hongdu burst out laughing, not recalling the way he struggled among the insects before. Hyuga Satoru caressed his swollen belly with satisfaction. It's not that he was greedy for cheap, but it was just that he fed the Byakugan bloodstain and life magnetic field at the same time, so that his food intake was far beyond that of ordinary people, and eating a lot also helped him improve his physical abilities. With a slight click of his tongue, Hyuga Satoru whispered, I feel that our instructor has a slight, social fear. Social fear. Anko heard this word for the first time and looked at Hyuga Satoru curiously. Anyway, it just means that he is not good at socializing, but for the Aburame clan, it seems that most people are like this. Anko thought of Aburame Jawei's airtight appearance, with only a small part of the skin on his face exposed, as if he was afraid that others would notice him, and suddenly felt that the word, social fear, was quite appropriate. As expected of you, Wu, I have learned a new word. Hyuga Satoru thought for a while. His mission career will probably be very interesting in the future. Regarding my guidance, Jonin is obviously very strong, but is he too afraid of society? In the Hokage room, there was a knock on the door. Please come in. Sarutobi Hiruzen was immersed in his official duties. He raised his head and saw a man wrapped in a wide robe walking in. He was a little downcast. It's Jiwei, how are you? Are you satisfied with the members of the new team? They are all very good talents, but I'm not sure I can teach them well. Jiwei, don't underestimate yourself, you are Konoha's famous all-powerful Jonin. Hiruzen Sarutobi said with a smile. Aburame smiled wryly and shook his head. Hokage-sama, you know that the reason why I am called the Almighty Jonin is because I prefer to fight alone rather than working in a team. Instructing students is really a bit difficult for me. Quote. Sarutobi Hiruzen put down his work, sat upright, and looked at him seriously. Jiwei, ninja is a profession that requires cooperation. After all, individual power is limited. The growth direction of the three of them has not yet been determined. Only you, the all-powerful Jonin, are the most suitable for this task. This will be a great benefit to you and the entire team. It's a big growth overall. Really, Master Hokage really has good intentions. Aburame nodded slightly. As long as you understand, please report their situation to me now. Aburame Jiwei thought of the white-eyed kid who wiped his throat neatly, and suddenly smiled and said, that Hyuga kid with 2 blood stains, he is a very interesting person, and he has a surprisingly big appetite. Hey, Satoru, is this really the cultivation life after graduation you said? In a place full of garbage, Hongdo covered her mouth and nose with a towel in disgust, and was using a wooden stick to poke at the blocked sewer. Well, on the bright side, this can be regarded as exercising our willpower, right? Said Hyuga Satoru, who was sweeping away garbage next to him. So helping the old lady clear the clogged sewer is also a form of cultivation. Well, Hongdo sighed. Every time he received a task these days, it was garbage tasks such as finding cats and dogs to clean the sewers. He suddenly missed the days when he was in the ninja school. The tasks were not too heavy, at least they didn't need to be done. Doing these dirty jobs. Why did I graduate after listening to Satoru's slander? Isn't it good to lie flat? Hongdo gritted his teeth with hatred. She learned the word, lying flat, from Hyuga Satoru, and it perfectly fit her philosophy. However, she glanced at Hyuga Satoru and Uchiha Rin next to her. There were 2 wealthy monsters next to her. It was so difficult to lie flat. She roared in her heart. Hyuga Satoru didn't have much objection. The completion history of D-level missions was a necessary requirement for accepting high-level missions. However, he seriously doubted whether Aburame Shiwei deliberately took on tasks such as cleaning sewers out of revenge. What a stingy ninja. As for his daily practice, it has not been greatly affected. On the mountain behind where he usually practices, there is a shadow clone who is making up for his lost efforts. Shadow clone's training method was obtained from Uchiha Rin. For her, B-level training ninjutsu is not a particularly precious thing. It took a while to master Shadow Clone, and since then I have been able to practice both tasks. Hyuga Satoru has always had a sense of urgency in him. The upcoming 3 battles and the shackles on his forehead are constantly spurring him on. Without strength, he is just a piece of meat to be slaughtered by others. Although the life in the ninja school is comfortable, it does not conform to his philosophy. Only continuous progress can make him feel safe. The Zong family's attitude towards him is very subtle. In any case, the title of the first double-blooded ninja in the history of Hyuga will always attract a lot of attention. According to his understanding, it seems that it is the pressure from the Hokage that makes him currently living in Hyuga. So stable. The caged bird, if external forces cannot be relieved in a short time, then only scientific research is left. The reason why Anko is brought into the team is largely to hook up with Orochimaru. After all, Anko was taken over by Orochimaru in the original work. For the disciples. I really hope I can take on the mission and fight soon. Uchiha Rin's voice brought Hyuga Satoru back to reality. He looked up and saw Uchiha Rin flexing his muscles, with a look of eagerness on his face. Why are you in such a hurry? Uchiha Rin looked at him, his dark eyes full of eagerness. The family elders said that Sharingan can only awaken in life and death. I can't wait to get that kind of power. It's too curly. Hyuga Satoru's mouth twitched slightly. After completing several D-level missions in this way, one day, Hyuga Satoru and others were called to a training ground by Aburame Jawei. After briefly describing the mission requirements, Aburame Jawei said in a deep voice. Do you understand the requirements of this mission? I understand. Hongdu raised his hand hesitantly, but Teacher Jawei, will it be too difficult for us to perform a B-level mission for the first time we go out? Konoha's scouts found traces of Iwa ninja activities at the border of Grass Country. They seemed to be searching for supplies, and their mission was to prevent the other party from bringing the supplies back. This kind of mission that involves the battle between ninjas from two countries requires a B-level starting point at the lowest level. The enemy's highest strength is only Chunin. If I were alone, I could complete it in an instant. This is a training for you. It's really straightforward. The corner of Anko's mouth twitched slightly. Hyuga Satoru's eyes flickered, and traces of the Iwa ninja's activities were found on the border. This was a precursor to the coming war. From this point of view, the three tragic wars in his memory were not far away. With the configuration of their team, the strategic significance of their own white eyes, and the omnipotence of Aburame Jawei, the task they must perform is not a simple one. Uchiha Rin didn't think much about it, he was just eager to give it a try. Then it's decided. I'll give you half an hour to prepare supplies and gather here in half an hour. After several days of traveling, Hyuga and the others finally arrived at the location marked in the intelligence. Standing on the branches and looking out, they could see a green field. According to the latest intelligence, those rock ninjas will transport a batch of supplies passing by here. My mission is to prevent them from bringing the supplies back. Hyuga Satoru hid in the bushes and silently observed the changes around him. Searching for supplies during this period is undoubtedly preparing for the war. Cutting off Iwa ninja's supply preparations may delay the arrival of the Third War. What he lacks most now is time. His Byakugan has been opened to the extreme. After more than a year of training, his Byakugan range has increased to 3 kilometers. Not long after, a disguised caravan appeared in the field of vision. From the perspective of Byan, one could clearly see the considerable chakra flowing in their bodies. Here we come, Hyuga shouted. At 3 o'clock, 3 kilometers away, there are 5 people on the other side, 4 Chunin and 1 Genin. 5 ninjas. Anko subconsciously swallowed. With Teacher Jawei here, you shouldn't need to worry too much. When she looked back, she suddenly got goosebumps. Huh, where is Teacher Jawei? You were obviously here just now. Why are you missing? I saw that the bushes where they were hiding were empty, except for the 3 of them, there was no one else. Forget it, no need to be with Teacher Jawei. He should be hiding somewhere else to watch the battle. This battle is on our own for the time being. Hyuga Satoru took a deep breath to calm down and looked at the 2 of them. They should be passing by here in 10 minutes. Let's make a battle plan in advance. First. The 2 Anko listened silently. Ito was walking at the front of the queue. The 5-person convoy looked like an ordinary caravan. If you look closely, you can vaguely see the equipment of shuriken, kunai and other ninjas under their dusty clothes. The handover of supplies this time was quite successful. As long as the supplies are transported back, you will definitely be rewarded by Lord Tsuchikage. Yantu thought happily in his heart that their team set out from the country of craftsmen, passed through the country of grass, and was now getting closer and closer to the country of earth. When passing by a bush, a sudden change occurred. A kunai suddenly shot out from the bushes and shot straight towards him. Attack. Do you want to hurt him with such a level of attack? Yantu's eyes were cold. He held a kunai and blocked it at the position where the attack must pass. However, just when the kunai was about to be blocked by the rock and earth, the trajectory of its movement suddenly changed, crossing an arc with a strange posture, and was firmly nailed to his throat. Superior. His pupils suddenly shrank, and Yantu opened his mouth wide with a look of disbelief on his face. He wanted to say something, but his mouth was filled with overflowing blood-red foam. Captain Geotechnical. Enemy attack. After seeing the tragic situation of their captain falling, the Iwa ninja team immediately calmed down after a brief panic. They tore off the windbreakers used to camouflage, revealing full of standard ninja equipment. Since they have suffered an ambush, it means that their identities have been exposed long ago. Continuing to maintain their disguise will only add inconvenience to the battle. The moment they took off their disguises, 3 figures suddenly rushed out of the grass, holding kunai and rushing towards the Iwa ninja. White eyes. Just 3 little brats, they actually gave Captain Gyo technical. The tall Iwa nin gritted his teeth. He looked at the position of the carriage and shouted, "Huatu, take care of the supplies. Leave these 3 brats to us." "Yes," shouted the thin Chunin. Seeing that one of the remaining Iwa ninjas did not rush over, but chose to guard the supplies, Hyuga Satoru was delighted. In this case, their lineup would be exactly 3 versus 3, and the pressure would be greatly reduced. "Rin and I will deal with those 2 Chunin. Anko, you stop that genin." Receive. Hyuga Satoru was fighting against the tall Iwa ninja, who was very muscular. In terms of body shape, Hyuga Satoru only reached his waist. Hyuga Satoru threw several shurikens one after another. While flying, the trajectory of the shurikens suddenly changed, but they were blocked by the opponent with kunai, causing only some skin injuries. "Kid, did you use this ability to kill Captain Rock and Earth?" Looking at the bloody wounds on his body made by shurikens, the tall Iwa ninja gritted his teeth tightly. It's a weird ability to control shurikens. No wonder Captain Rock and Earth got hit by it. But it's useless now. Hyuga Satoru's expression remained unchanged, and he used electromagnetic force to change the trajectory of the shuriken. Although his ability was strange, its biggest effect was to kill him at first sight. If the opponent was prepared, the effect would be very low. Exposing this ability in exchange for the life of the strongest person on the other side is a profit no matter how you calculate it. On the other side, Uchiha Rin's face was a little solemn, holding a kunai in both hands to resist the ninja sword that was slashing at extremely fast speeds. "A sword ninja. It's really troublesome." Uchiha spat disdainfully as he dodged a backflip to avoid the ninja sword that slashed through his waist and abdomen. It has to be said that sword ninjas are more restrained in her type. The kunai hands are too short and cannot benefit from close combat. If you use ninjutsu, you will be quickly approached. For a while, the battle fell into a stalemate. The battle situation on Anko's side was also quite thrilling. Genin, who was fighting against her, had far more combat experience than her and suppressed her to death. Looking away, Hyuga Satoru thought to himself, "We can't delay any longer, we must end the battle as soon as possible to support them." The tall Iwa ninja who was fighting against him seemed to see through his thoughts and laughed, "As long as I am here, there is no way you can successfully support them. It's been dragging on for so long, and it's time to end." Secret technique. The technique of rock armor. The rock ninja suddenly formed seals with his hands, and dense rocks covered his body like armor. His originally tall figure suddenly grew taller, and he looked like a rock giant. The giant opened his mouth and made a roaring sound like the wind blowing in the valley. "White-eyed brat, you are a ninja of the Hyuga clan, right? Because of your gentle fist, I did not choose to fight in close combat. In this state, it is impossible for gentle fist to break my defense." He opened his legs and rushed towards Hyuga Satoru, and the casserole-like rock fist was aimed at his head. "Who told you I used gentle fist?" Hyuga raised his eyebrows, crouched slightly, and quickly pressed a palm on his side. Along with the dull roar, the severe pain caused the Iwa ninja's pupils to shrink. He looked down and saw that where Hyuga Satoru's palm was printed, the area on his flank had completely disappeared, and the blood-red hole was horrifying. "Hey, my kidneys are spicy. Hey, my kidneys are spicy." As soon as this thought arose, it was swallowed up by severe pain and fear. The armor made of rocks continued to disintegrate and fall off, revealing the original appearance of the body. This is gentle fist?" the tall Iwa ninja asked with a pale face. "It probably doesn't count." Hyuga Satoru thought for a while and said, "Strictly speaking, this move is the 2.0 version of Magnetic Storm Palm. The first generation of Magnetic Storm Palm used the principle of electromagnetic pulse, which caused burning damage and impact damage to the human body. However, in version 2.0, Hyuga Satoru tried to combine the gentle fist technique with the magnetic storm palm he developed as fused together, and uses the gentle fist technique to deal the damage of the magnetic storm palm from the inside. This is also why the opponent's rock armor is so fragile, because the damage is caused from within. Hyuga Satoru never sticks to forms, and combining various techniques to exert greater power is his pursuit and goal. After a critical attack on his internal organs and a waste flying out of thin air, the tall Iwanin finally fell to the ground helplessly after letting out an unwilling cry. Hyuga Satoru looked at Uchiha Rin's position and saw that the battle there had also entered a fever pitch. The Iwa ninja used his ninja sword to suppress Uchiha Rin and retreated. After seeing his companion being killed by Hyuga Satoru, the Iwa nin let out a mournful roar, his eyes filled with blood, and the offensive of the ninja sword suddenly increased, and for a while he suppressed Uchiha Rin. Suffer it. Hyuga Satoru felt a chill in his heart. However, under the continuous attacks, Uchiha Rin had a slight gap. This gap was caught by the rock ninja, and the ninja sword slashed hard at Uchiha Rin's head, with a ferocious look in his eyes. Die. The scene seemed to be frozen, leaving only the sound of flesh being stabbed open and the constant flow of bright red blood. Iwa Ninja's body seemed to be frozen, his pupils were trembling constantly, and the ninja sword passed by Uchiha Rin's side, cutting off a section of black hair. He opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but only red foam kept spitting out. A kunai was firmly inserted into his throat, and blood continued to flow down the slender fingers that were holding the kunai tightly. In Uchiha Rin's cold eyes, scarlet as blood, a dark magatama slowly rotated. Hyuga Satoru arrived and swallowed. Are you okay? Satoru, you were right, Sharingan can only be truly inspired at a critical moment of life and death. Pulling out the kunai and shaking off the blood on it, Uchiha Rin spoke calmly. Congratulations. Hyuga Satoru breathed a sigh of relief, and immediately his face became strange. He awakened Sharingan before he was 9 years old. There is no doubt that Uchiha Rin is a real genius. If I am so close to her, will I be sacrificed to heaven one day? Probably not. Where's Anko? Uchiha Rin said. Hyuga looked over and saw that Genin, who was fighting Anko, suddenly had a lot of black bugs coming out from under his feet, swarming up and eating his flesh and blood, letting out bursts of screams. The knot is over. Hongdu wiped the sweat from her head and sat down weakly on the ground. Aburame Jawei appeared on the battlefield and looked at several people with admiration. You are all quite good. Facing ninjas who are more numerous than you, you completed the task perfectly. No, it's all thanks to Satoru and Rin. I didn't even defeat a single genin. Anko was dejected. This battle made her see clearly the gap between herself and her teammates. No, Hongdu, you are already very good. Genin is already at a disadvantage against you. Even if I didn't take action, you will win in the end. Hongdu said nothing and lowered his head slightly. Teacher Jawei, let's go see the supplies collected by Iwa Ninja. Hyuga realized. Arriving at the place where the carriage stopped, Hyuga Satoru found that the Iwa Ninja who had been guarding the supplies was missing. He suddenly had a bad feeling in his heart. He opened the cloth covering the carriage and was dumbfounded. There were only some empty wooden boxes decorated with prying eyes in the carriage, and there were no supplies at all. Be cheated. This carriage is just a cover. I'm afraid the real supplies have been transferred away with seal scrolls. Aburame Jawei's heart sank. During the battle just now, in order to take care of the safety of his students, he focused all his attention on the other side. Unexpectedly, something went wrong here. Hyuga Satoru immediately opened his Byakugan. From the Byakugan's perspective, he saw a Chunin nearly 1 kilometer away, carrying a huge scroll behind his back, and running away crazily into the distance. It's the Iwa Nin who was behind the supplies before. At that location, it's about 800 meters away from here. Hyuga Satoru immediately pointed out the location of the escaping Iwa Nin from the Byakugan perspective. Aburame looked over and saw a faint black spot on the green edge of the vast grassland, which was getting smaller. Aburame Jawei quickly analyzed the situation in his mind and sighed helplessly. Even if this mission fails, I will explain to Hokage that it was my mistake. You all performed very well. Wait a minute, Teacher Jawei, can you use the insect swarm to lift me up? It doesn't need to be high, 5 meters is enough. Aburame Ji was slightly confused and said, Judging from your weight, it is okay to use insects to build a platform to lift you to this height, but there's no time to hesitate, hurry up. Hyuga Satoru looked at him solemnly. All right, although I don't know what my student wants to do, I can only believe in him now. Aburame raised his palm slightly, and countless black insects emerged from his body, flew to Hyuga Satoru's feet and condensed into a black platform, and lifted him up precariously. A little higher. Aburame Jawei increased the output of the insect swarm and dragged Hyuga Satoru to a height of 5 meters. What exactly do you want to do? He looked up solemnly at Hyuga Satoru on the black platform. Stepping on the soft insect mat, Hyuga took a deep breath and took out a scroll from his arms, with a hint of hope in his eyes. This is the first actual combat of the electromagnetic sniper, don't let me down. Bang! The white mist dissipated, and a strange metal crossbow appeared in Hyuga Satoru's hand, reflecting a slight cold light. That's Satoru. Are you finally going to use it? Below, Uchiha Rin's eyes sparkled. What is that? Aburame looked at the ninja tool in Hyuga Satoru's hand in shock. Is it a bow? Is it a crossbow? No, it's an electromagnetic gun. Hyuga took a deep breath, twisted a metal arrow and put it on the bowstring, and began to build an electromagnetic push. The tip of the arrow was aimed at a black spot in the distance that was so tiny that it was almost impossible to see. Electromagnetic push is being built. Building completed. Wind speed measuring. Air humidity is being calculated. Gravitational acceleration is being calculated. White eye angle correction, aiming at the target. Hyuga Satoru held his breath, and the fingers holding the bowstring relaxed slightly. In an instant, with a sharp explosion, the metal arrow turned into a blue thunder arc and disappeared. Go ahead, only my railgun. He roared in his mind. It's so dangerous. It seems they haven't caught up. Hyuga, who was desperately escaping, glanced behind him and gasped for air. I didn't expect that Tsuchikage and the others were all killed. What a terrifying Konoha brat. After returning to Iwagakure this time, Master Tsuchikage must be more vigilant, especially that white-eyed brat. Hyuga thought of the 2 teammates who died tragically, and a chill suddenly rose in his heart. This terrifying white-eyed kid must not be allowed to live. Just as thoughts arose in his mind, a strong life and death crisis suddenly exploded from his back. He simply turned his head and his pupils suddenly shrank. I saw a metal arrow wrapped in a thunder arc, shooting towards him like thunder. The canthus of the gray earth is completely cracked. What is this ninjutsu? Before the roar could be heard, the arrow had already arrived, and the terrifying penetration instantly tore his body together with the scroll behind him, and smashed it firmly to the ground. On the insect mat, Hyuga put down the raised bow and arrow, raised the corners of his mouth slightly, and murmured in a voice that only he could hear. Target neutralized. What happened? At the same time as the sharp explosion sounded, Hongdo subconsciously covered her ears. Now she only felt that her brain was buzzing, and she was confused and at a loss. She turned her head and saw Uchiha Rin and Aburame Jawei looking at the direction of the arrow in shock, their pupils trembling slightly. Satoru, is this the ninjutsu you want to practice? Aburame Jawei took a deep breath, and his eyes were filled with depth after being shocked. Through the insect's perspective, he saw more things. No chakra fluctuations were found on the arrows, and the speed exceeded the reaction limit of conventional ninjas. The ultra-long-range strike distance, coupled with Byakugan's vision. This is the ultimate ninjutsu, born for assassination, capable of changing the course of a war. Is ninjutsu developed by combining 2 blood successors? The combination of 2 chakras is the blood inheritance limit, and the combination of 3 chakras is the blood inheritance elimination, but what is the combination between the 2 blood inheritance limits? Teacher Jawei, you can put me down now. Oh. The voice of Hyuga Satoru coming from above brought him back to reality. After responding, he controlled the insect to let Hyuga Satoru land on the ground. Satoru, are you okay? Seeing Hyuga Satoru's face pale and weak, Aburame Jawei said worriedly. It's okay. Hyuga Satoru shook his head, it's just that the chakra was overused and I collapsed. Just rest for a while. That's good. Aburame breathed a sigh of relief, let's go see that Iwanin. Hyuga Satoru's eyes flickered. In fact, according to the level of the arrow just now, he can shoot up to 3 arrows in his current state. However, this move is too shocking, so it is better not to expose his limit. It is necessary to kill the Iwa ninja, otherwise if he returns to Iwa Hidden Village alive, he may have to endure endless assassinations by the Iwa ninja, and what he lacks most now is development time. As a branch house, it is impossible to betray Konoha, so the greater the value to the Hokage, the better. Even if you cannot enter the Hokage family, you can at least use the power of the Hokage to check and balance the clan. Thinking like this, several people had already arrived at the place where the rock ninja died. I saw that his body and the scroll behind him were violently torn apart from the waist, and a scarlet flower bloomed on the grass. Perhaps the death process was too fast, but his face still remained the same as the second before death. The horror is lifelike. What a pity. If I could aim more accurately, I might be able to kill him without destroying the scroll. Hyuga Satoru felt a dull pain at losing the supplies in the scroll. The scroll was equivalent to the key to the storage space. Once the scroll was damaged, there was no way to take away the supplies unless the location of the storage space was found. Don't say that. Aburame Jawei's mouth twitched, and he immediately persuaded Hyuga Satoru to stop the Versailles behavior. The bow-type ninjutsu you developed, combined with the Byakugan, is quite terrifying. It is simply unheard of. Even if I encountered it from a distance, I would probably be helpless. Teacher Jawei is ridiculous, it's just a move that can't be used on the stage. Hyuga Satoru shook his head. Aburame Jawei crit X2. Okay. After a feeble response, Aburame Jawei ordered, clean up the battlefield and this battle will be considered successfully completed. After groaning, Aburame Jawei added another sentence. As for ninjutsu, the bow and arrow developed by Satoru, please don't publicize it when you return to the village, and don't reveal it to anyone. Whether it is due to the confidentiality of Hyuga Satoru's own information or the caution due to his branch house status, the fewer people who know about this unheard of bow and arrow ninjutsu, the better. Yes, Uchiha Rin and Anko nodded solemnly. Returning to Konoha, Aburame Shiwei, after giving all members of the third class a rest break, rushed to the Hokage room without stopping. It's Jawei, how are you? Have you completed the task assigned to you? After seeing the people coming in, Sarutobi Hiruzen put down the work at hand and spoke with a smile. It has been successfully completed. Really? Sarutobi Hiruzen nodded and praised, it seems that under your leadership, this team has grown very quickly. Aburame took a deep breath and said, Mr. Hokage, apart from this matter, there are some things I want to report to you. Then, Aburame Jawei reported what happened during the mission one by one. Uchiha Rin awakened Sharingan. Hyuga Satoru developed a strange bow and arrow ninjutsu and killed an Iwa nin at a range of nearly 1 kilometer. Sarutobi Hiruzen took a deep breath, and there was a hint of solemnity in his eyes. The former was okay. Although the 9-year-old Sharingan was a rare genius, it was not unheard of. And the latter's bow, ninjutsu, is simply unheard of. The combination of two blood successors. Can such a unique ninjutsu be developed? Does the Zong family know about this? Aburame Ji shook his head slightly. I had a simple chat with Satoru on the way back. He said that he only gradually mastered this technique recently, and the Zong family probably didn't know about it. Is that so? Sarutobi Hiruzen nodded. Then there is no need to notify them, just let nature take its course. Those people at Hyuga are too stubborn and rigid and stick to the rules. If they knew that Hyuga Satoru practiced bow and arrow ninjutsu, I'm afraid he would be dissatisfied again. Hyuga Satoru is a ninja of Konoha. There is no doubt about this. In the war in the near future, the ninjutsu he developed may have miraculous effects. Hearing this, Aburame Jawei took a deep breath and asked tentatively, Master Hokage, are you going to start a war? Sarutobi Hiruzen sighed and said helplessly, World War II has passed for a long time, and the strength of each village has reached its peak. Recently, the scouts have received intelligence. Those villages seem to have made some big moves. It depends on who sinks first. I can't hold back my anger. Is that so? Aburame nodded solemnly. Jawei, you just need to take care of these students. They are all the leaves of the village. Yes, Hokage-sama. Uchiha tribe land. In a forest, Uchiha Rin was furiously attacking the wooden stakes with his bare hands. A magatama slowly rotated in his scarlet pupils, and the sound of physical strikes echoed in the empty woods. Do you still like to practice alone? Who? Uchiha Rin suddenly turned around and saw an old man wearing Uchiha clan clothes standing behind him, his eyes like those of an eagle. It's Elder Setsuna, what's the matter? The hostility on Uchiha Rin's face subsided a bit. Seeing Uchiha Rin's pair of Sharingan, Uchiha's eyes suddenly flashed with passion. It's these eyes that awakened you at the age of 9. Rin, you are a real genius. Although Aburame Jawei is not weak, he will not develop the true ability of these eyes. Give up that team and quit in the name of injury. I will teach you the true power of Uchiha. Uchiha Rin's eyes flashed with disgust, and he frowned slightly. I appreciate your kindness, Elder Setsuna, but that's where I can grow the fastest. Uchiha's eyes suddenly turned sharp. Is it because of that Hyuga boy named Satoru? Elder, you don't have to worry about my affairs. The disgust in Uchiha Rin's eyes deepened, and she stared at him with a hint of hostility. Although the second blood successor has been awakened, it is unique, but after all it is just a branch house. I didn't expect you to be so interested in it. Uchiha shook his head slightly for a moment. Forget it, since you have already decided, I won't force you. After saying that, he turned around and left, leaving Uchiha Rin with a confused look on his face. There was a hint of sneer in those eagle-like eyes. I didn't expect that your bond would be so deep. Well, the more profound the relationship, the more painful it will be when it is destroyed. Only in this way will it give birth to the true power of Uchiha. In the early morning, after tossing and turning all night, Hyuga Satoru climbed out of bed. After all, this is my first time killing someone. Hyuga Satoru sighed. Last night was the first time he had insomnia after traveling for so long. The tragic death of several Iowa ninjas who fought yesterday seemed still vivid in his mind. After all, after receiving modern education, he still needs a process to accept the cruel reality of the ninja world. He shook his head to clear away the distracting thoughts in his mind. Now is not the time to think about that kind of thing. The three battles and the caged bird are all chasing him like wild beasts with their mouths wide open. He must improve his strength as soon as possible. After breakfast, Hyuga was about to practice when he heard someone knocking on the door. Hit the gate of opening, it's Hyuga. Uncle Hiragi, what's the matter? The clan leader is looking for you. Oh, I'll pack up and go right away. On the way, looking at Hyuga's thin body, Hyuga's eyes showed a complicated look. During this time, Hyuga's reputation as a genius gradually spread among the Hyuga family, but he knew very well that genius was a curse to the branch house. If it were an ordinary branch house, it would not be too painful if their whole life passed by like this. But if they were geniuses, letting them accept the helpless numbness would be the real torture. Hyuga Satoru didn't know what Hyuga Hiragi was thinking. He was just thinking about the clan leader's intention of letting him go. The door of the sect hall was pushed open, and Hyuga Satoru once again saw the old man sitting cross-legged on the tuanfu, and the young man standing next to him, Hyuga Hiyashi. Hiragi, please step back. Yes. Hyuga Hiragi saluted the old man and silently exited the clan hall. Lord Patriarch. Hyuga bowed slightly. The old man's half-closed eyes opened a crack, and his eyes pressed with pressure on Hyuga Satoru in the middle of the sect hall. I heard that you have been very close to Uchiha's tribe, and you were even given ninja tools to train with her. It's just a companionship. She and I are in the same team, so it's normal for us to be close to each other. Hyuga Satoru said in a neither humble nor overbearing tone. That's all. The old man shook his head. I don't care whether you choose to be in the same team because you are very close, or you are close because you are in the same team. I just want you to understand that I, the ninja of the Hyuga clan, his cultivation does not require the support of other family members. This is related to Hyuga's face, you know. The old man's gaze was like an invisible knife, oppressing Hyuga Satoru. Hyuga was speechless. The old man changed the topic and his tone suddenly became a little softer. I understand that it is difficult for your savings to support the consumption of cultivation. Let's do this. From now on, you can receive an extra 10,000 taels from the Hyuga Jatang every month. Think of it as the family's support for your cultivation. Hyuga Satoru disdains the combination of a stick and a carrot. First he suppresses him to make him fearful, and then he gives some sugar water to win people over. This clan leader is already very fond of the way of employing people. In fact, His funds are no longer particularly scarce, and the bounty from the B-level mission he just completed is enough for him to use for a long time. Thank you, Patriarch. Hyuga Satoru thanked him respectfully. No matter what, the surface work must be done well. Yes, Hyuga Shueyu nodded. I know you have never paid attention to the practice of Gentle Fist, but I still hope you can pay attention to Gentle Fist. This is the secret practice of returning to heaven. You can go back and study it for 3 days. Send it back here immediately after 3 days, remember not to spread it to anyone. Hyuga Satoru took the scroll thrown by the old man and felt surprised. Keishin is one of the secret transmissions of the sect. Generally speaking, branch houses can only understand it on their own and are not qualified to practice it. This behavior of Hyuga Suigetsu is already breaking the rules in a sense. Thank you, Patriarch. Hyuga pretended to be happy and thanked the old man. Well, you go back. After Hyuga Satoru disappeared from the sect hall, Hyuga Hiyashi next to him asked in confusion, Father, why did you give him the training method of revolving heaven? The old man raised his head slightly, and a hint of depth suddenly appeared in his cloudy eyes. Hiyashi, did you know that Hokage came to see me yesterday? The Hokage is looking for you. Hyuga Hiyashi looked surprised. Yeah, the old man nodded. You know that our Hyuga situation is special. Even if Hokage wants to mobilize branch house ninjas, he must get the clan's consent. I originally thought that Hokage wanted Jonin from branch house, but I didn't expect that it was his genin. What does Hokage want him to do? He has only one genin. Even if he has 2 bloodstains, he won't be of much use, right? Hyuga Hiyashi was puzzled. The old man shook his head. I don't know, it's probably related to Anbu's mission. It seems that Hokage values him very much. Well, after all, he is the first double-blooded ninja in the history of Konoha. Whether Hokage wants to cultivate him or reuse him, the branch house's first allegiance is to the clan, so we can just follow the trend. Hyuga Hiyashi nodded slightly. After going back, Hyuga Satoru began to look through the practice manuals of Kaden. In the Hyuga clan, usually only the Zong family is qualified to practice Kaden, while the branch house can only rely on understanding. In the original work, Hyuga Neji realized Kaden during the Genin period and was named a genius. Since Hyuga Satoru didn't pay much attention to the training of the Gentle Fist system, he didn't delve into the Keishin training method. Now he has made up for this shortcoming. The rest holiday given by Aburame Jawei is 7 days, and today is the 2nd day. Hyuga Satoru thought about it, and the time was almost enough for him to develop new abilities through Kaden. The principle of Keishin practice is not complicated. Chakra bursts out from acupuncture points all over the body in an instant, and then rotates at high speed like a top to form a hemispheric chakra cover. The difficulty lies in the technique of bursting chakra and the control of high-speed rotation. The formed Kaden has the ability to deflect attacks and is known as absolute defense among the Hyuga clan. But this ability obviously did not meet Hyuga Satoru's requirements, so he tried to combine revolving heaven with electromagnetic force. After several days of study, he gradually developed several new ways to use it. While using Kaden, electromagnetic force is used to construct repulsion, which greatly increases the defensive ability. Metal objects will be bounced away by the repulsion without contact, similar to the all-round Shinra Tensehang. In the same way, it constructs gravity and transforms into a humanoid meat grinder. Or it can be paired with metal ninja tools, such as the ninja sword. While controlling the ninja sword, use Kaden and Meat Grinder 2.0 version. The enemy wanted to run, but due to the influence of gravity, he could only be swallowed by the high-speed rotating blade. Hyuga Satoru named these 3 special Kaden respectively: Kaden Yin, Kaden Yang, Kaden Kenwu. Regarding building electromagnetic repulsion and gravity, Hyuga Satoru's current influence on non-metallic objects is still limited, but if there are metal objects on the enemy, the influence will be greatly enhanced. The upper limit of electromagnetic power at LV2 level is very obvious, but Hyuga Satoru's experience value has now reached 3,289 6,000ths, and he is not far from LV3. 7 days passed by, and the hard work life came again. Hyuga Satoru got up from bed early and came to the agreed training ground. The team's task was taken over by Aburame Shiwei. Before seeing him, he didn't know what the task was. As soon as he walked over, He saw Uchiha Rin standing in the middle of the training ground, looking at him calmly with his hands on his chest. You were late. Hyuga Satoru shrugged and said helplessly. The appointment was obviously at 7 o'clock, but now it's only after 6 o'clock. As a ninja, arriving 2 hours early is the best way to hone your will. Satoru, you are so unmotivated. Do you know? Hyuga Satoru immediately covered his ears, not wanting to listen to this king's nagging anymore. When there were only 2 minutes until 7 o'clock, Enko ran over panting, wiping the sweat from her forehead while panting. Everyone, I'm sorry, I was almost late. It's okay, I came very late. Hyuga Satoru comforted him. Hongdu, you are so unmotivated. Arriving early is. Uchiha frowned in displeasure. As soon as she opened her mouth, Hyuga immediately covered her mouth with quick eyes and hands. Aburame Jawei was unusually late for a few minutes. He glanced at the 3 people in front of him and said with a deep voice. This mission is quite special. Only Hyuga Satoru and I are participating. The rest will practice on their own for the time being. We will continue the team mission after the mission is completed. What? Only Satoru and the teacher are participating, so I woke up so early for nothing. Enko rolled her eyes and began to miss the warm bed. Uchiha frowned. Why did you only choose to understand? How long is the mission? This is the Hokage's decision. As for the mission time, it depends on the situation. Hokage. Uchiha Rin's eyes flashed. If Hokage appointed him directly, could it be related to the Anbu mission? Aburame took a slight breath and said in a deep voice, Satoru, I will give you 1 hour to prepare, and the rest will disperse where they are. In the forest of the country of fire, 2 figures wrapped in black robes kept jumping among the treetops, like 2 ghosts, quickly sweeping the surrounding woods behind them. Aburame Jawei stepped on the thick branch and jumped up quickly. Satoru, this mission is of great importance. It depends on the situation. The mission level is tentatively A. If there is an emergency, it may become S at any time. S. Hyuga Satoru took a breath and looked at him in surprise. Yeah, Aburame nodded solemnly. You know about the underground black market, right? Black market. Hyuga Satoru frowned. I've heard of some. It seems to be a place that specializes in issuing bounty tasks. The heads of ninjas are exchanged for bounties. Of course he was no stranger to the black market. The head of his classmate Sarutobi Asuma would be worth 35 million taels in the black market in the future. Yeah, Aburame Jawei muttered. The black market is the dark side of the ninja world. The 5 major countries and even many small countries have black markets. They are underground worlds independent of the surface world and are used to handle transactions that cannot be done in the open. Quote, because of the importance of the black market, Konoha has deployed Anbu scouts in the underground black markets of the Land of Fire and several nearby major countries. About a week ago, Anbu, who was stationed in the black market of the Land of Iron, suddenly received information. There is an abnormal transaction with a huge amount in the country's largest black market. The amount involved exceeds 100 million taels. Not only that Anbu also found traces of Iwa ninja near the black market. Iwa ninja. Hyuga Satoru's eyes flickered. So what the Hokage is saying, is for us to investigate this. Yes, there have been a lot of activities in Iwagakure village recently, and the Iron Country happens to be a neighboring country between the Fire Country and the Earth Country. There are rare large-scale abnormal transactions in the black market. Hokage suspects that it is related to the war. Hyuga Satoru looked solemn. This was not good news for him. Once the war came, his development time would be greatly compressed. With his current strength, I'm afraid it's not enough to face the threat of war. But in his memory, wasn't Sand Hidden Village the first to initiate the Third War? Why did Iwagakure village jump so frequently? Suddenly, he seemed to have thought of something and smiled helplessly. No wonder the clan leader gave me the Kaishin cultivation method a few days ago. Hokage must have asked him for someone. Hokage actually asked him for a branch house genin. It was essentially a hint. But thinking about it carefully, this task is really suitable for him. First of all, the importance of Byakugan in investigation missions is self-evident, and Anbu does not have any Hyuga members. Compared with other Hyugas, he has one more magnet-style bloodstain, and can snipe ninjutsu from a long distance, which is more functional. As for Aburame Jawei, he is known as the all-round ninja and has almost no rigid abilities. The combination of two people is the optimal solution. After thinking about this, Hyuga Satoru took a long breath. It seemed that Sarutobi Hiruzen valued him very much. Because of the thing on his forehead, he had to endure the oppression from the clan. Using the power of the Hokage to check and balance the clan was a good idea. Good choice. After several days of traveling, the two finally arrived at the Kingdom of Iron. Before entering the densely populated city, Aburame Shiwei handed Hyuga Satoru a pair of round slices. Satoru, your Byakugan is too conspicuous, which is detrimental to the concealment of the mission. Bring this with you. Hyuga Satoru took it, looked at it curiously, and immediately opened his mouth. These are color contact lenses. No way, the ninja world even has colored contact lenses. Aburame slightly scratched his head in embarrassment. This is a prop used in Anbu to cover the color of pupils. Don't worry, although it is a bit ugly, it is still quite comfortable to wear. After Hyuga took it on, he blinked. Nothing in his eyes changed, and after he got used to it, his eyes didn't feel much like a foreign object. He picked up the mirror and took a look, and saw that his pupils had turned brown, the most common color in the ninja world, and he looked no different from anyone else. The technology tree of the ninja world has become so crooked that Hyuga Satoru couldn't help but sigh. After being prepared, the two entered the capital of the Kingdom of Iron. The Kingdom of Iron is a typical samurai country. The architectural style retains a strong style of the Warring States period. You can see many samurai wearing armor on the road with long samurai swords on their waists. Although samurai don't know ninjutsu, their biomagnetic field is much stronger than that of regular ninjas. Looking at the samurai on the road, Hyuga couldn't help but click his tongue. The strength of the biomagnetic field is closely related to physical ability, and none of the samurai on the road has a biomagnetic field weaker than Chunin, and some are even as powerful as Jonin or Chunin who specializes in physical arts. No wonder samurai were able to build a country under the attack of ninjas. This physical strength alone has surpassed many ninjas. A taijutsu ninja who specializes in sword skills. However, it seemed that he was defeated by him, so Hyuga shrugged. The whole body is covered with metal armor, and the weapon is also a metal ninja sword. No amount of this kind of samurai is enough for him. In addition to samurai, the capital of the Kingdom of Iron also has many civilians or travelers from other countries. Hyuga and Satoru were dressed up so that they were not conspicuous in the capital. After some inquiring, the two came to a hotel. The proprietress of the hotel was a young woman. After Aburame reported the secret code on WeChat, she immediately quietly took the two of them to a secret room. As soon as he entered the secret room, the proprietress seemed to be a different person, and she slightly saluted Aburame with a solemn expression. Anbu's code name is Red Pigeon. I've met you, sir. Anbu's code name is Insect. Aburame said calmly. The landlady turned her attention to Hyuga Satoru with a puzzled expression. Hyuga Satoru looked embarrassed. Anbu code name, shit code name. I am not Anbu. He is not an Anbu member. Aburame said. Not Anbu. The boss lady couldn't help but be surprised. The Hokage would actually send members other than Anbu to carry out such an important task, and they are still so young. Hyuga looked at Aburame and thought to himself, it seems that the teacher has a high status in Anbu, and he can also lead the team as Jonin. He should be a special existence in Anbu. Tell me the latest information. Aburame spoke concisely. The proprietress took a breath and her eyes flickered. When we were exploring the transaction in the black market a few days ago, we made new discoveries. The purchasing party has been identified as Yenian Village, and the transaction content should be the reserve of supplies and the transaction time, for 2 days later. Iwagakure Village. Reserve supplies. What material is worth more than 100 million taels? Hyuga Satoru felt a little heavy in his heart. He thought about the content of his last mission, which was to find an Iwa ninja searching for supplies in the Kingdom of Grass. Didn't he expect that he had already reached out to the Kingdom of Iron? Such a large reserve of supplies is probably for the war. Get ready. Aburame frowned, and also discovered this, and sighed. It seems that Hokage's worries are right. Such a big move in Iwagakure Village is indeed preparing for war. Hyuga thought for a while and said, since the transaction time has been determined to be 2 days later, can the transaction be destroyed within this period? No, As soon as he finished speaking, Red Pigeon shook his head. Transactions in the black market will be protected by the black market forces. Before the transaction is completed, if someone tries to sabotage it, they will be besieged by all the black market ninjas. Is that so? Hyuga Satoru smacked his mouth. He didn't say it casually. With the bonus of Byakugan and Magnetic Storm Sniper, he is quite good at making trouble. For a moment, the atmosphere in the secret room became depressing. Give me the location and relevant information of the black market, and we will go to the scene to investigate. Aburame Jiwei said in a deep voice. Yes, street. Hyuga Satoru and Aburame Shiwei walked side by side. Teacher Jiwei, who do you think sold such a large amount of materials through black market channels? Hyuga asked after thinking for a while. Aburame Jiwei said, in the ninja world, there are certain large-scale chambers of commerce that conduct money laundering transactions through the black market. In addition, many big names from many countries have their own channels in the black market. However, transactions of such a large amount are still relatively rare. Hyuga Satoru nodded. He always felt that this matter was a bit strange. The Kingdom of Iron was not a country of ninjas. Why would someone sell such a large amount of materials on the black market? The two chatted quietly all the way, and soon came to the black market in the intelligence. After finding a good spot in a nearby izakaya, we started exploring. Their current status is that they are travelers from other places to the Iron Kingdom. It is not easy to enter the black market directly, so hiding outside to explore is the best option. Satoru, can your Byakugan see what's going on inside? Aburame Shiwei asked. Hyuga Satoru made a rough estimate and said, within this range, there should be no problem. After saying that, he quietly opened his eyes. From Byakugan's perspective, the opposite izakaya, which looked ordinary from the outside, suddenly had a huge space inside, filled with people. According to Chakra's feedback, many of them are warriors. No wonder the Kingdom of Iron has such a large-scale black market. It turns out that many samurai are involved in it. Hyuga sighed. The Byakugan's ability is maximized in the special environment of the Iron Kingdom. Because there are so many samurai, the ninja's chakra is as conspicuous as a searchlight. After eliminating some scattered ninjas, he discovered a group of powerful ninjas in a hotel about 500 meters away from the black market. Teacher Jiwei, there are 7 ninjas gathered in the hotel 500 meters away in the 3 o'clock direction. Judging from the amount of chakra, there are about 5 chunin and 2 jonin. One of the jonin has a large amount of chakra and should be an elite jonin. Aburame Ji nodded slightly and said, it seems that these are the group of rock ninjas in the intelligence. Let's wait and see what happens. Hyuga Satoru breathed a sigh of relief. The strength of these rock ninjas was not particularly strong. From this point of view, the danger level of this mission should not be too high. Just when he was about to remove his white eyes, he suddenly made an unexpected discovery. Wait a minute, Teacher Jiwei, something is wrong. What's wrong? Aburame Jiwei felt anxious and asked quickly. There is a jonin hidden about 600 meters away from that hotel. Is it also an Iwa nin? Hyuga Satoru shook his head solemnly. No, he and Iwa ninja are definitely not on the same side. Judging from his behavior, he seems to be spying on them. Surveillance. Aburame took a breath and narrowed his eyes. This was not good news. It meant that besides them, there was a third-party ninja force in the capital. The direction of the mission suddenly became confusing. Hyuga Satoru's heart also became heavy. The joy of discovering the Iwa ninja team just disappeared. If he hadn't kept an eye out and searched more, he might not have been able to find him. The other party's method of hiding his figure was quite clever. Can you tell which ninja it is from? Aburame asked tentatively. There is no way. Hyuga Satoru shook his head. The other party has a strong sense of counter-reconnaissance. Byakugan can only see the flow of his chakra and cannot judge his identity. Is that so? Aburame Ji nodded slightly. Let's stay here to observe and adapt accordingly. Hyuga took a deep breath, and he suddenly thought of an old saying, the mantis stalks the cicada, but the oriole follows behind. And now they seem to be competing with the mysterious Jonin's forces for the identity of Oriole. Just like that, in the evening, the mysterious Jonin moved. Teacher Jiwei, he is moving outside the city. Let's follow. The two quietly followed the mysterious Jonin. Because the other party had a strong sense of counter-reconnaissance, the two always kept a long distance. Until they reached the depths of the forest outside the city, Hyuga Satoru's eyes flashed. Through his eyes, he saw where the opponent stopped. The location that Jonin was going to seemed to be a stronghold, and a lot of powerful chakra was found flowing. Aburame Jawei narrowed his eyes slightly. Sure enough, this task is not as simple as it seems. Just as the two of them were moving forward towards that stronghold, Aburame Jawei suddenly raised his hand to block Hyuga Satoru. Wait a minute, Satoru, there's something going on. Hyuga looked around and saw a few black parasitic insects flying over from the woods and landing on Aburame Jawei's shoulders. While tracking, Aburame Jawei also released parasitic bugs to investigate. The name of the all-powerful ninja is not for nothing. After absorbing the information sent back by the parasite, Aburame Jawei's face turned ugly. The parasite has discovered that there are sentient barriers ahead. If we step in rashly, we will be discovered by them. Hyuga Satoru immediately searched with his Byakugan, and sure enough, near the stronghold, several ninjas could be seen sitting cross-legged, seemingly maintaining barriers. Are we just going back home like this? Hyuga Satoru's heart sank. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.